latest 2 months ago to do something about this. Now, this swarm is attacking the country's food basket.
This is pretty annoying, by the way. I was just actually thinking about it this morning and thinking the most we've seen is the Ministry of Agriculture telling us, don't get confused. There are grasshoppers and there are locusts. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you see something and you're not sure that this is a locust, post it on social media and we're going to tell you whether this is a grasshopper or a locust. The point is, even if they're grasshoppers and there's a swarm of grasshoppers, if you've seen those things coming, they're still also eating. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter whether they're grasshoppers or locusts. Yes, maybe the intensity may be different, but they are eating a lot of vegetation. And then let's look at how the government reacted to this. So we waited until these things had been spotted in the country over 2 weeks before we started spraying the ground.
Get the order of things correct. A choir was formed first.
2 weeks, and then we formed a choir. Mm-hmm. Went out with bells and whistles.
Mm-hmm. Literally.
And police officers. Oh my goodness. And then now is when we're seeing private individuals like the Northern Rangers Trust. That's what it's called. The guys in Laikipia, they're the ones who are donating their aeroplanes to assist. The government has only supplied one plane. And here we are talking about, these things are moving and they are moving. They've been moving from those 3 counties. Now they've gone to, how many counties have you just counted? 7?
7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 8, 9.
9 counties. 9 counties. And if they get to Laikipia, they get to Kirinyaga.
They're moving, and we've already seen that they will get into the Rift Valley
Nyeri,
and then get to the maize fields of Kitale at some point. It's going to happen, unfortunately. This is the migratory route that they take normally. So they're going this way and heading down that way out of Kenya and then south in the southerly direction out towards Mozambique. This is what happened.
And they are still in Ethiopia and Eritrea.
Yes, they are. We saw yesterday the Ethiopian Airlines plane that had to then be grounded because there's a swarm of locusts that got into the engine. So,
this is serious.
It is.
And then the same way we've been talking about how the government addresses some of these things. We saw how the government reacted to the flooding. Right? Now we've forgotten because there are people who are still in camps. People need to move from all those camps. They need to get their lives back in order. They haven't been assisted. Now we're talking about our food basket. If you look at those 3 counties, for example, where pastoralists depend on this vegetation for their animals, like if that is gone, then what are we talking about? The people in Mandera, Wajir, Garissa, their livestock, where are they going to take their livestock? There's no food for their livestock. This is done.
It's done.
And here we're still talking about, I'm sure if you went to the ministry, either the Ministry of Agriculture or the Ministry of Devolution and ASAL, you will find, you'll find minutes of a meeting that took place, and that meeting formed a task force or a team to manage the coordination of the response to these locusts. You'll find more probably that that meeting was actually comprised, or the team that was formed, was set up, was comprised of junior officers. So whatever the recommendations they come up with require to go 2 or 3 steps higher up before they get an approval. Right. That takes time. So that's why we're seeing like this thing is taking forever to react. It's because...
No, honestly, I don't think it's really being given as much seriousness as it deserves. Now, this is when we are going to see that perhaps people are going to now stand up, because now when we see it coming, it's coming closer home, and of course it's coming to the seat, right?
Yep.
This is when people are going to sit up and take notice. Like Kirinyaga, moving towards the Rift Valley, where a major percentage of the country's food comes from. People are going to sit up and take notice. But then when you have something as ridiculous as they're saying the chemicals that they got for the spraying that was supposed to start yesterday, then they realized when they were about to put it into the plane, they realized that it was actually not the right stuff. It was for hand pumps. What are we doing?
Madness. Ugh. We're going to have an expert coming in on Thursday morning to discuss this issue of locusts and how to react to this. And this will be Professor Onesmo Olemoyoi. He's a senior visiting scientist at the ISIPE, International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology, and a senior advisor at academic planning at Aga Khan University, East Africa. Right? He's been the chairman of the Kenya Agriculture something. So he's going to be coming on Thursday. We'll discuss this. He'll tell us what is it that we need to understand about locusts. He'll tell us
if there's a way to actually solve this problem.
Yeah,
There is.
Obviously, there
of course,
will
there's
be.
a way, but now, I mean, really.
Remember, one of the things that ECPA does is they study the relations between insects, creatures like grasshoppers, the relationship with the ecology of life. That's why you say physiology and ecology, how they contribute to food production, how they also contribute to the reduction of it. Anything you want to know about how these insects and such creatures influence plants, believe me, there is no facet that they do not cover.
They do not cover.
No.
I want to ask what the use of flies are.
Flies.
Just taking a step. I mean, what's the really? Could we do without them?
No.
Flies.
Yeah.
No.
No?
No. You are looking at the nuisance factor of
No,
flies.
for real. I don't
Yes.
see anything else.
What's a useful factor?
Thank you.
They
Is
act
there a
as
use-
food
For whom?
certain, no,
Oh.
for geckos, for lizards.
Oh, those
yes,
ones. But
yes,
then they annoy
yes,
us in the
yes.
process.
Yes, but
And
also
chameleons,
remember, yes, but also bear in mind that when you're talking about pollination, you may not
Okay.
think that they actually play a part.
They also
but
play a
But
part
they
in
do.
pollination.
They do.
They do.
They do.
Okay.
You only think of bees as the main. Birds also do the same thing.
Birds do, bees do.
Yes. So it's
The birds and bees and flies.
Yes.
Well, okay.
The headline on the Standard is a hostage president. It says the president is in a catch-22. The handshake and the building bridges initiative have pushed the relationship between Kenya's two topmost leaders to the brink of havoc. It has left the president holding two tigers, Raila and Ruto, by the tail. Both tigers are restless, ambitious, and politically ruthless. Whichever of the two tigers the president lets go of, he must prepare to reckon with the aftermath. And it looks bad. Too much drama? Too dramatic?
Not entirely.
Exaggerated?
Not entirely. There are truths to it, but this is now where reporting begins to earn its keep, and this is where it enters the realm of giving itself the ease of access and the ease of criticism. Because if they say you use the word captive, then you are hostage for that matter. Then you have to ask, what are the elements that comprise this state that they're speaking of?
Right.
I would argue that the person who's actually hostage is the VP or the DP.
Why?
Because ambition. When it is clear to all and sundry and even to the blind that you have this unbridled need and desire to become the president of a country, and that you will do anything within your means and within the means of others close to you to ensure you reach this goal, you are captive to that desire. It drives you. So,
Absolutely. It drives everything that you will do
That you
or
think of and all,
Absolutely.
yes,
all
and,
your decisions.
and it also blinds you in the process. This is where the term blind ambition is actually derived from, because nothing else other than this goal that you've set for yourself matters. And actually, life doesn't just comprise of the one thing that you may have focused
Someone
on.
else may call it laser sharp focus.
Yes, laser sharp focus has the same results, because if you're laser sharp but you are not cognizant of other elements,
surroundings.
then indeed you are captive. That's what it means. You're hostage. This is what consumes you. This is what desire. This is what pushes you. And indeed, as I've used the word consumed, it will eventually consume you if you do not understand what it actually entails in its
But the
entirety.
ambition to be president, basically, I think then it's the two of them, Raila and the DP, because Raila has also had the ambition to be president, and it's for long. And he has.
He isn't. These
he
two
has
are
shown
not
it
the only
openly.
ones.
No,
Yes.
in terms of the intensity with which the two of them have shown. Raila has also shown the same intensity of
He
his
has.
ambition to be president. He has
He
tried
has.
it northern. How many times now?
Three.
Three only? No.
Count.
Are you serious?
4 actually.
Hey. Yeah. 4.
No. Yes, 4.
97, 202. No, 202.
No,
he didn't.
202 didn't.
So 207,
3.
13,
As I've said.
17.
3. I got it
4,
right.
4.
2017, 2013, that's 2. And then 19.
207.
Okay,
207,
207,
and then
13,
97.
17, 4. Yes.
Yeah, the
Right.
4 times. And you see, he has shown that he's fought for it. I mean, he's formed formations. He's gone into Kanu, come out. All this is with the ambition of being the top leader of the country.
True.
Same thing we'd say about
There's a fundamental
this.
difference.
The
on,
DP.
on 2 occasions, in fact 3, that it has been registered by the IEBC that he has lost the election, he has conceded gracefully.
Right. Something to consider. It's interesting because in the same vein, on the front page of the Daily Nation again, Ruto to fight on, says his allies. And Deputy President is in Jubilee to stay. No amount of embarrassment or threats will deter him. say his supporters in wake of the calls on the DP to resign for criticizing the Building Bridges Initiative activities. So there are tough choices to pick from, according to this. 1, resign. Some members of the Kieleweke camp in Jubilee have dared the DP to quit, claiming he's undermining his boss. 2, stay put. Mr. Ruto can stay on and fight his rivals, given that his position is protected by the Constitution. Or 3, slow down. He can decide to take a back seat and avoid open confrontation with the head of state and state officials. So, I mean, still the same thing. It seems to be backed into a corner, but I guess his desire to be at the top seat trumps everything else.
I think resigning would not be a wise move to make.
No, I mean, I don't think it's money. I don't think it's one he would even consider.
Yeah, you're protected by the Constitution. Then you have access to all the state resources. Why would you resign?
The deputy president will not resign.
You cannot resign. Even if I were the deputy president, I wouldn't resign. Now the other two options are what I'd be fighting over. You know, whether to go slow or to keep pushing. But resign? Why? So it's that story is covered on the page 4 and page 5 of the Standard. This is the hostage president, the handshake, and the Building Bridges initiative have pushed the relationship between the two Kenya's topmost, that's the president and his deputy, to the brink of havoc, because the president, according to this article in the Standard, is holding two tigers: the deputy president William Ruto and the ODM party leader Raila Odinga. Well, page 4 and page 5 on the Standard. Good morning.
Right. Schools, of course, opened yesterday. Parents complained of unnecessary levies and being forced to buy expensive uniforms in school. And surprise, surprise, NEMIS crashed, and this forced schools to use the manual lists as students are enrolled in Form 1. Thousands of Form 1 students trooped to school as admission started this week, with head teachers resorting to enrolling them manually when the electronic system failed. The failure of NEMIS delayed the admission process, with schools in Vihiga County reporting having challenges using the online format. School managers had to use a manual list to continue the enrollment uninterrupted. In Kakamega County, St. Peter's Boys High School, as an example, said teachers will work overnight to transfer the students' information onto the system. The school was allocated 395 Form 1 slots.
395 Form 1.
One school, yes.
One school.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to break down, what's the best number of students per class, City? 40?
40 is supposed to be the optimum, really.
So 395 divided by 40. How many streams are we talking about in just Form 1?
Because remember, there were 1 million students who wrote the KCPE, and Magoha said all of them
need to transition.
Will go to Form 1.
I think the challenge is now coming, of course, in terms of infrastructure in secondary schools. Because most of the secondary schools that we have in the country ought to be boarding or are boarding schools, right? So we don't have very many day secondary schools.
We do have day secondary schools,
but the majority is on.
Yes. Now, those aren't even the issues here. We had this discussion, if you remember, not earlier on the week, last week, and even yesterday we touched on it. It isn't as though we do not know the number of students who are going to go to Standard 8, and by extension, the number of students who will want to seek Form 1 places. Yeah. We do know.
We knew.
And even when you listen to the budget speech and they talk about things like the budgeting for education, they say such things. Considering the number, blah, 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 blah,
this
blah.
Is what we will do.
We will blah to cater for. They say it, which means it's been thought out, it's been planned for. Then comes the disconnect. Yes, up to that point, we're doing okay.
Thought to action.
Yes, then comes the disconnect. So, and
because you have serious challenges. All the schools that you have to think about in the country, all of them are having issues of crowding.
If you look at schools that seem to manage, you will find that the alumni plus the PA or the Parents Association are very instrumental in ensuring certain things work well.
Yes.
Yes. And it is true that, again, in this very show, it's been mentioned that is one area where one could even argue that the government has allowed private institutions to come in because they themselves don't seem to have been able to live up to the expectation of the mandate that they have for providing education for the citizens. Yes.
They don't have the capacity.
No, they don't. It's clear something went wrong and it has continued to go wrong. And it is also argued that is why they will allow these shoddy half-baked schools to actually
continue
admit
operating.
Schools, yes, under the most dangerous of circumstances, because then it meets the needs of students seeking education.
Right.
Yes.
We need to think about, like the way we're talking about, looking at areas that have vast land and ensure that we expand and build schools and expand them into these areas. If you look actually at many of the old schools, they had vast
They did.
acres of land.
They did.
Mangu High School, for example, I think has over 100 acres of land, and it's still congested.
Some of the acreage that some of these schools have is
Serious.
mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling. Prime land.
So
If you don't work on that, then you're wondering, so what is this school
Part
supposed
of
to do
the
with this piece
problem
of
that
land?
we had with many of these schools, for the longest time, schools did not have individual title deeds.
Yeah.
It was just gazetted as government land. And we know how that story goes, don't we?
So government land can be excised for whatever other reason. Let's see how this education sector issues roll out.
Yeah, we'll see, because admission ends on Friday this week, and it's likely to continue for some time. So let's see what that.
But why this thing becomes, should we say, takes center stage, is because of the seriousness which parents take education in this country. It's the one thing a parent feels is one of the most precious things they can actually afford their child.
Yes.
Yes. And someone somewhere understands this. So they figure, even if you fall short, the parent will do whatever is required to ensure that this school works okay. Yes.
All right. In a small column there in The Nation, the Kenya Union of Journalists says it will report police brutality to the United Nations. They threatened to report the harassment of journalists by the police to the UN if the government and the Inspector General of Police do not take action. In a statement to media houses yesterday, KUJ Secretary General, Eric Odor, said it was regrettable that police officers were becoming the biggest threat to the independence of the media, noting that the media is a key tenet of a democratic society. He spoke following an incident in Mombasa in which an officer was caught on camera clobbering Laban Waloga, a photojournalist with the Nation Media Group. Waloga was covering ongoing demonstrations against the SGR. So apparently, they're taking the case forward if the government doesn't do something about it.
Well, I think, if I recall correctly, there's a letter that, a copy of a letter that they had actually written to...
And the Media Council as well, actually.
Yes, exactly, because it isn't something... This strike that we hear, or this commotion that we hear in Egerton University, media individuals were actually harassed and were subject to beatings and equipment confiscated. Now, this has died back. What has happened? Because there seems to be a resurge of this mentality that security forces have, that they are the law.
They
actually forget that they're actually not the law. They are custodians of the law, not the law.
Not the law itself.
No.
Something needs to be done, actually, so that they can remember this. And I think it's about time that Media Council of Kenya even took these cases to court.
They actually ought to.
Yeah, so that we have a case where we are setting precedent. You do this, every action has consequence. An equal and opposite reaction shall be expected.
What was that particular law in physics?
It's a Newton's law. Was it third law or something? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
I didn't do very well in physics.
No?
So the president has done what we were talking about yesterday. He has gazetted the fresh extended term for the BBI team. So the 14-member task force has a mandate to propose statutory or constitutional changes that are necessary for the implementation of the BBI report. He has given them new TORs. He has told them your work for the next 6 months. And tell us, what do we need to do? If the government is to come up with some policy changes, if the government is to draft some new laws, if there's any constitutional amendment needed, if there's any of them that requires a referendum, this is what the team has been told to do. So,
interesting enough, but Omtata has gone to court to stop the extension of BBI team's tenure.
Yes.
Of course, a serial court, or rather serial suit, as we know him to be. After this has been gazetted, of course, activist Okia Omtata moved to court to block President Uhuru Kenyatta from extending the mandate of the task force set up to spearhead it. members of the steering committee, who of course are included, he wanted President Kenyatta to be barred from extending the mandate at the term, and he says the team should also be blocked from undertaking any activities and using public funds. And he argues that there had been pressure to gazette the decision to extend the mandate and tenure of the task force so as to ensure a referendum is held by mid this year to amend the constitution. So at the heart of it is, of course, constitutional amendments that Omtata is saying, no. We understand that this is what they actually want to do. No, don't extend the term. No referendum. No, stop it.
These cases that this gentleman keeps taking to court may even appear to have a huge nuisance factor, but I think they don't. Because I think there's no way of expanding and getting to understand these constitutional demands and what the law actually says about them unless you have a case in court. Because you have a case in court, there has to be a judgment. And from that judgment, you have a clear way forward.
Yes.
Right.
If it's challenged again, that way forward or the understanding of it there
is clarified
further. So these are actually good things.
I like Omtata.
Yes, these are good things.
And I like the route that he takes.
He doesn't take it sitting down.
Let's go and enforce it. So basically what his argument is that he sees like the president wants to initiate a constitutional referendum through the popular initiative. Popular initiative then, why is it being financed by the government?
Yes,
why are you using state resources to push a popular initiative? Let somebody, if you think you have a popular initiative, you as Uhuru Kenyatta go and seek 1 million signatures.
By the way, what is also of interest, again, is the governors, there are 6 governors, we are told, 7, from Central Kenya, who signed an agreement to implement the second phase of the UHC. Nice thing, with one caveat. Now that National Hospital Insurance Fund seems to be going through the wars it's going through, and it's a key partner in this process, how will that pan out?
I don't know.
Okay.
Remember, though, that part of this is actually some money used to go through the NHIF.
Yeah.
So NHIF, their liquidation problems are going to be sorted.
No, they're not. The problem is
you don't think so?
I don't even think it's a liquidation problem. It's the usual perennial
liquidity.
Mismanagement and misappropriation of funds at NSSF, and it's been that way at the fund for years.
NHIF.
And
NHIF.
At NHIF. Well, that's the thing. I mean, we're talking about scandals in the billions, and it's not a matter of that. It's not a liquidation issue. People have taken the money, have eaten it. We like to call it what it's not.
So give them new money now that you have new people.
So that they can eat it
again. They can eat it again.
So now these new people are the ones that are not supposed to eat.
This one is, you can eat the crop, but in this case, NHIF has even eaten plus the seed.
And I've seen actually the civil servants are saying now that, civil servants have this particular scheme. Remember the managed scheme by civil servants? Now the Civil Servants Union is saying our tenure is coming to an end. We'd like a new one. So the civil servants have asked the government to start the process of procuring an alternative health insurance scheme ahead of the looming expiry of their state cover. The Kenya Union of Civil Servants, KUKCS, Secretary General Tom Odege yesterday said that the announcement by Acting Treasury CS Ukur Yatani that NHIF is not authorized to provide private insurance cover would lock out 133,000 civil servants. Odege, who accused the government of disowning NHIF, said the union's contract with the state body that was signed in 2012 was expiring at the end of the current financial year and called for a private alternative to be set up. So the issues here are NHIF is not governed by, it's not under the Insurance Regulatory Authority. It's not under insurance law. It's not an insurance company. So because it was offering this particular managed scheme to civil servants, Ukur Yatani, the CS for Treasury, says they can't do that. They cannot offer insurance cover. They are not authorized to provide private insurance cover.
So, what does this mean then in terms of their mandate going forward?
No. They have what they have as a fund. So when you contribute, yes, they come in and they subsidize. Yeah. They take care of stuff.
Essentially, Eric has actually mentioned it well. It's like a scheme you contribute to, and then the scheme assists you.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like a SACCO.
Yeah.
It's not an insurance.
It's a health SACCO.
Not insurance, right.
It's a health SACCO.
Yes.
So you go and draw money from
money
it when you need.
Yes.
When you need to.
But wisdom ought to have dictated that they should have gone the insurance way.
There has been that discussion.
Yes, because
the pros and cons of it.
But given the amount of funds that they actually have, remember, With insurance, we also have reinsurance.
Yeah.
Why do insurers need to be insured? For that very purpose, for indemnification.
Yeah.
So that should something go wrong, there's a plan B. There's a fallback plan. You can now rely on this to bail you out.
Yeah.
But if they did that, then what that would mean is that they'd put themselves a certain noose around their necks. They'd be subject to a lot of other regulations. I don't think they've wanted that for the longest time.
Trying to avoid those regulations.
Yes, because if you enter that sort of arrangement, then essentially what you've done, you put yourself under the Insurance Regulatory Authority, and they will look into your practices.
And if you get into that, then you don't have that statutory obligation as well.
Yes.
You cannot, then the others will say, no, this one is being supported by the government.
Yes.
Why? It's not level playing field. Hey,
many other discussions will take place, and those discussions would have been necessary if those who manage this scheme had good intentions and if their intentions were purposed towards benefiting their contributors. Clearly it isn't.
I think they usually are. It's just that, they're overtaken by
greed.
Other
it's business.
Other human.
They say they care. It's
Greed.
business.
Other human aspects.
Business.
Greed.
29 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is a Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads. If you know of anything that Nduoko should know right now, just please tweet her. That's at SpiceFMKE. And then we continue the conversation. We're taking a look at what's been covered in the headlines, what's local, what's international. We know that the Queen held a meeting yesterday with her family. So we'll also be looking at what they said out of that meeting as well. Good morning.
Have never sounded so good.
My favorite songs of the 1980s.
94.4 Spice FM. Traffic.
Kicking things off this morning, looking what's happening on Thika Road today. Of course, Mwiki Kasarani, we have major issues there because residents and operators on that route have decided they're not letting anybody ply that route until the road is actually worked on. So that means that people are having to walk about 5 kilometers to get to Roy Sambu. So that part of the road has been closed off. If you reside in that area and trying to get out, you're not going to be able to unless you walk, unfortunately. No PSV is operational, so people are relying on private vehicles, and of course is affecting traffic in that area, and this is day 2. Approach Mombasa Road with caution this morning because the traffic going towards the city is quite it's chock-a-blocked, bumper to bumper, all the way from Syokimau at the SGR. Okay, looking at different parts of the city as well. Thika Road is giving us some serious traffic vibes this morning, trying to get into the CBD. Coming off Langata Road and Gong Road right now, not much of a headache, but we'll see what it looks like in about half hour. We'll take a look at Mombasa and Kisumu as well, and other parts of the country, so we can let you know how to move a little easier this morning. Send us a tweet, SpiceFMKE, or give us a call, 0719 012 600. Let's see how we can keep you moving.
96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
It's Tuesday, the 14th day of January 2020. Welcome to The Situation Room. If you're just joining us, my name is Eric Latif. We have CT Muga and Nduoko. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. One of the conversations that we've been having lately, CT, has been covered in today's financial standard. Today being Tuesday, the pull out on the standard is the financial standard. And this is the billionaires who could not manage their mega riches. This is on page 8 or page 4 of this financial standard.
Actually, what again this brings out is our reporting and the way in which we report issues. If they say they couldn't manage their mega riches, how were they rich in the first place? And once someone has passed away, or even if they're alive and things have gone wrong, how exactly can we just lump it under one statement and say that they were not?
It's about management.
Yes, how? Some of these things have nothing to do with management.
What is it about?
Well,
If you look at these cases, for example, the billionaires that have been mentioned, that are being featured in this particular story, all right? Gershon Kirema, Pradeep Ponrana, and of course, Zelen Jenga Karume and Atul Shah. And they were also looking at the late John Meshoke, right? So they're talking about if you have been fascinated by the rags to riches stories of the late politician Jenga Karume and Nakumatt Supermarkets founder Mangalal Shah, then your excitement must have been deflated. Last week must have been a watershed moment for the two business empires that were built from scratch to splendor with soccer. Now, then it goes on to talk about now, most of the family businesses are averse to seeking outside help, fearing to enlist the help of outsiders. This apprehension may stem from their concern about whether the family's vision for the business will be truly understood and honored. It's about managing the estate. So yes, you've acquired the wealth. Yes, you're a good manager, but managing the estate to ensure that it stays on even after you're gone.
Right, but you can manage. You can only do so much.
Pradeep and Atul Shah are still alive.
But you find that a lot of times these scandals that we see coming about are after the death of the patriarch or matriarch, as it were. So they could have managed it well as long as they were alive. But once they left this earthly residence, then things went south, literally, because those within which they put. So then does the blame then lie on them because the managers...
Succession planning is a very key component of managing your wealth. So you're looking at it and you're saying, so who am I going to leave this wealth with or for, to the benefit of? If it's about my offspring, then how do I bring them in and make some...
If you read the stories that posthumously, as they say, some of the problems have nothing to do with the patriarch. It has to do with the trustees.
Exactly. It's the trustees that now...
The mismanagement usually is not... It doesn't even fall in the hands of the descendants of this particular patriarch. It's... If you read, for instance, the Njenga Karume story, the trustees seem to be at the center of this particular problem. The way they have managed whatever estates that this particular gentleman left behind. And it's been an ongoing thing. The Koinange family have had similar issues. Now, that the family members appear, if we go by what the media reports, to not agree on such matters, that is normal. Families tend to disagree even when the patriarch is alive. It's just that we don't get to hear of it. And when the patriarch is no longer there and they've gone on to the netherworlds, then we find that what probably may have existed is now in the open. And it's usually exacerbated by something else. There'll be more than one wife.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
Which means...
Or even if,
so,
an illegitimate child somewhere.
That all points back to management.
No, it doesn't point to management.
It does, City.
No,
because those, if you look at the ones that have actually survived, the big families, even globally, that you see a name continues generations into generations, it's how that first, the matriarch or patriarch, actually held together the family and what he said and how he wished the succession to take place. If it's about appointing trustees, if you bring in trustees who do not even understand anything about management of companies, then you have actually set it up to fail. If you bring in trustees who are not trusted by the beneficiaries, it also amounts to failure. Because as soon as trustees are appointed and then you're gone and your children are fighting with the trustees, what does that point to? It points to the fact that you do not manage this transition very well.
If we look at
it's like, people at the end, people are just coming to hear a will when you've already gone and they're hearing a will and they're hearing, oh no, he's appointed a trustee. They had no clue that this is what you had planned to do. They had no clue that this was how they were supposed to move on after that. Get into fighting. Management.
If you are talking just purely of business, then factors that make big businesses fail are as many as their businesses that actually exist. Because one, a lot of it has to do with many of such businesses such as the ones we are speaking of. Their success depended on this individual, meaning they were the pillar. They never became a business in the international sense of the word, where it was an entity that more or less ran with or without this person's presence. That the moment that person's presence was not there, the business was endangered. Then there's some businesses that collapse because they fail to innovate and to keep up with the times. The best example that's always given is Kodak. They were the world leaders when it came to photography. Then the digital age came in. They understood it, but somehow they didn't take it up.
Yeah.
And they actually literally became history.
They took a hit. They're still in business.
Believe me, they are nowhere near
Where they used to be, yes.
Absolutely
No,
nowhere.
in terms of the monopoly they enjoyed for decades, they don't even come up in conversation when it comes
they
to
hardly
digital
do.
photography or things like that. I mean, so it's again, of course, points to that
But-
didn't keep up with the times.
And that's it. For that reason, recently there was a gentleman who was in the media. He did something interesting. He escaped from Japanese security. Okay. Yes.
Carlos gone.
Yes, and he ended up in his native Lebanon. Now, why did this man become famous? He did something that someone in a previous generation called Lee Iacocca had been able to do for the motor industry in Detroit. Where people thought things couldn't work, he made them work. He brought in Renault, he brought in Nissan, he bought into companies and made something that appeared not to be going anywhere. It actually became a world power again in the motor industry. In the absence of his intervention, many of those companies left on their own had died for all intents and purposes. So what you would ask, if it's a motor industry, what is it that was making these companies die? There was no patriarch as such.
No.
No, it was just a business. Now, right now, the cement industry in Kenya is going through some interesting shake-up.
Yep.
Now, it's not that people are not building. It's not that they don't need cement. It's not that we have more cement factories than you know what to do with. Again, it's not as though there's this singular individual who's behind these companies. It's just the winds of change and the vicissitudes of time. There was a time it was only Bamburi. They had a monopoly. And even they came about.
And Portland.
Yes. Remember, one of the things that you found, these were companies that predominantly employed expatriates.
Yeah.
So, for instance, you'd find they provided the expatriates with huge houses, huge allowances, overseas trips. That was the culture, okay? Allowances for a vehicle, all these things. Now, the moment competition came in and it became apparent that they were not the only ones who were providing this service, they had to change. Automation came in. The digital age came in. Now, that's just innovation coming in. Now, if we were to judge these people, I would argue, I would look individually at each of those businesses. For instance, what happened to Nakumat is not the same thing as would say happened to Njenga Karume. Nakumat seems to have overstretched themselves. There is a slang term that is used in comics, the tycoon's big mistake.
Right.
They just thought they could just keep expanding.
going.
That's one narrative. The other narrative is they did this deliberately so that they could get to a point where they were insolvent. And remember, they had a retail strategy that took retailing to its nth. They owned nothing.
Nothing. It was a rental state, basically.
For
within the super-
literally
Yeah.
everything. So meaning something went wrong, they could actually walk away. Of course, they would owe people money, they'd need to pay, but it was not difficult to prove that they were insolvent. So the question is, these goods that they took, surely they got sold. Surely there was money realized. Next question.
Why haven't you paid us?
Where is the money?
It wasn't profitable. So we did not retain a lot of it.
Unfortunately,
So therefore
that
we
is
don't
one
have-
argument
sorry.
it's difficult to buy even if you wanted to.
It
Well,
holds
the
no
receiver
water, is what
managers
he's
went
trying
there
to
and
say.
they found there's no money in the coffers. And
The
this
fact
is it.
that- the
And even
fact
after
that-
trying to run it for some time, they still could not
No.
make enough money to realize what was needed to pay this debt.
If you want to understand mismanagement and how it wasn't going to succeed, you need to look at Uchumi, whose model and structure was flawed. It started really well. They were working from a building that ICDC owned. So this issue of rent and what have you, then it was taken over. And what happened? They now got into the business of real estate. They would buy land and build. Now, that in itself was a problem.
became an issue.
Yes, because all these things have to be paid for at some point. Even when they tried to resurrect it, it was a tall order. Why do I say this? Against this background, if every other mega supermarket was collapsing, you'd say, this business, there's something fundamentally wrong with it.
But
But the opposite is happening. Others are succeeding
But
Right.
and growing.
Coming back to the issue of, how these tycoons, once they leave, their estates collapse. And in fact, we were discussing this last week. You raised it up last
I
week.
did, but
And it's about how is it that you manage your succession?
Yes,
Life after you.
but someone like
Because you
Kirema,
have
his
to
estate
prepare.
has not collapsed.
the kind of fighting that
Yeah, but it hasn't collapsed.
the kind of infighting, it's not maintaining the
It
same.
hasn't collapsed. Eric, I'm simply trying to point out that this report is
Just
not
like Njenga Karumes has not collapsed. It's about how you manage it as a unit.
Actually,
That one is gone.
Actually, they are on the verge of bankruptcy.
Bankruptcy.
Again, what you're saying is true. What you're saying is true.
Some businesses
there can be a turnaround
others
plan.
are not, yes.
Why don't I take you a little back to some other tycoon? They don't mention Kenneth Matiba. They did Kenneth Matiba.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you say that was a genuine tycoon?
he was.
Yes. Now, a lot of his businesses had to do with the hospitality industry
And school.
and school. Now, it just got from bad to worse to worst. Okay. Now, in that story, there's a lot of back and forth, and there's more to it than what is actually often told in the general public. Right? But if I leave the conspiracy element just out of it briefly, you could argue that in the absence of the man being in charge, because that business was never really going to survive, because it depended on him.
The business was the man,
Yes.
and the man was the business.
Yes. Now that business
Some
model,
of the challenges actually also come in there.
that business model likely doesn't.
If you
work
look at
very
all
well.
of these things, it actually is also showing the same. No sooner has Mr. John Mishoke passed away than we're seeing Windsor
Going
is having
down,
issues.
yes.
No sooner has Gerishon Kirima gone away than the family children are fighting. No sooner has Mr. John Kagema of Equity passed away than the family is fighting. Same kind of issues. So where you have children who are coming and they're fighting over the same property, or wives and they're fighting over property. So it's about how did you...
If children are fighting, their mothers are never far behind.
it's the mothers who are,
yes,
the wives are fighting using their children.
And some of these problems, if you actually talk to people who know these individuals or know of them, they'll tell you some of these problems could have been avoided. Because certain matters could have been resolved when the person was still alive.
Earlier, yes.
And they were not resolved.
Proper management, proper communication.
If you recall, there's a gentleman called Kanyotu.
Yeah.
When he passed away, similar issues such as the one we're discussing also came to the fore.
Yeah.
Yes. So there are indeed problems, but it isn't one. There may be similar threads that run through these things, but it becomes imperative that it is in our interest to actually look at each of these individuals and understand the unique problem that each of them had. There are those who argue that, for instance, Windsor had financial issues for the longest time. That yes, it was popular, yes, it seemed to make money, but it never really got to the point where it was making money hand over fist. It never actually got there. And when the patriarch was in place, he knew how to juggle whatever that was required. But the moment he was not there, it got tricky.
Right.
It becomes it gets murky.
Right, he was able
Yes.
to manage it, and then when he was no longer the face of it, then you saw what was really ailing the organization
Yes.
actually came to the fore. Interesting to look at.
It's about the man and the management.
Eric had to
Eric
find a
isn't
way to
moving.
bring
No,
it back.
no,
He had to
he
find a way
isn't
to bring it.
moving
Not
from
moving.
that
I mean,
position.
shikilia hapo,
It
as they would
doesn't
say.
matter what I say. I can speak until the saliva is dry in my mouth. He is not moving. So I am not going
concede.
to... No.
You cede.
No.
All right.
nimewacha.
It's 12 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is the situation. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We're taking a look at the local and international news. Of course, let's come out of this break and have 10 minutes of looking at internationally what's happening. We said last week that this man from Moscow is becoming the peacemaker of the world. In fact, I think the next Nobel Peace Prize should go to Vladimir Putin.
Voila.
And I'm putting it out there this
Oh,
morning.
Lord.
Yeah. I'll tell you why.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spin right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning.
Vladimir Putin.
Spice up yourself.
This is the man who is bringing
Mornings
peace to the world.
done right.
This is the man who is
94.4
sorting out
Spice
all the mess that
FM,
America has
Nairobi.
created around the world. So let's start with Moscow, where people are going to hold a meeting this weekend. Libya's warring leaders have held peace talks in Moscow, with Russia and Turkey urging the rivals to sign a binding truce to end a 9-month-old war and pave the way for a settlement that would stabilize the North African country. The Russo-Turkish push, which brought together the Libyan leaders for the first time in almost a year, is the latest attempt to end chaos that has engulfed the oil-producing country since the toppling of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. See?
So what?
See?
Because he opened his mouth and said a few things.
No, he's hosting these people who are warring, and he's saying this is the place to come, and this is how we are going to ensure that we have world peace. This is one move. Same thing he's trying to do with Syria. Same thing he's trying to say also with Iran. You know what? Let's do this.
He's positioning himself as a global big brother, and here you are saying that just because he's opened his mouth and put forth a few sentiments, okay. What did you say? He should be given the Nobel Prize for Peace.
Next year's Nobel Peace Prize should go to Vladimir Putin.
Well, how about we just take it back a few steps and say, okay, let's see what's going to come out as a result of these expressions that he has made. Just because he opened his mouth and said, okay,
not opened his mouth. He has actually spearheaded these talks. Together with Turkey, they have brought the warring parties together in Libya. Remember, we've been talking about Libya. In fact, you're the one who's been reminding us every so often that Libya is basically becoming a basket case. Now,
it's a basket case. Let's just...
I was just been trying to be nice.
Okay.
So here we are. So Ndu has been telling us that Libya is a basket case. All right? But now, Vladimir Putin has taken action. He has said... Together with Erdogan, they have gone into Libya. They have called the two warring parties together. They've said, come.
Well, this is good. He's entered the realm of competition. The Chinese foreign minister, certain gentleman, the Wang Yi, has come out in support of Zimbabwe.
So even him now, he should be contender.
Yes, he's a contender.
For the peace
He's
prize.
come and said that these sanctions that the US and UK have leveled against Zimbabwe should be removed because it violates very basic international laws of self-determination, etc., etc., etc.
And it's all flowery and nice, but come on, Eric.
That's very good.
Come on, Eric. You don't hand out these things like you do hot dogs at the state fair. It's not something that you just give just because.
It comes because of proven track record.
Which one?
Now, by the
this one is going to be interesting. Carry on, Eric.
By the time we are getting to announcing the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize winner, is it the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize winner? There'll be a track record of what the president of Russia has done to bring peace to the world.
Actually, this method of his isn't new. Remember, the people who pioneered this particular method were the Americans.
And they've gotten their fair share of Nobel Peace Prizes.
Yes. So he is treading a well-trodden path.
Yes.
When the world was warring, Europe was in flames, Americans saw an opportunity and came in. Remember, the other cousin who were certain oceans away, they came in, and for the longest time, they've played that role. Russia will be best advised to observe what happens to people who take over that role. It's a thankless task, but may Putin proceed.
May he proceed, and let's see if it's
same thing he's doing with Iran, like we said last.
In fact, why doesn't he extend it to Iraq while he is
this whole Middle East area? He's coming in and sorting out issues.
Excellent.
All the mess that Americans are creating,
he's cleaning it up.
Who's cleaning it up.
Excellent.
Okay,
it's all right. Good.
Thank you.
So he'll come up with he'll come up with the Marshall Plan for the Middle East. Because that's what America did to restore Europe. They came up with a Marshall Plan, isn't it? Right. Now, Marshall, many people don't know, was actually the Secretary of State immediately in those wartime areas.
Yeah.
So let us wait and see
what will happen.
The Putin Marshall Plan.
He may do that actually for African countries.
Well done.
Middle East would be good because that's where all these
issues are.
Yes.
He has seen himself as the one who's going to clean up the world. Well done. Global laundromat.
Good.
That's what you now want to use.
He held this conference the other day in Moscow with African leaders.
Good.
And
that one is how he
what to do, how to come in and support Africa.
What is all this flowery thing that you like to do?
Hold it.
When you're stuck on an individual who you see is going to save the world.
By the way, Putin is good at following what people have done. China
did the same thing.
When President Kibaki was president of this great nation of ours, while they were having the G8 or is it G whatever
he
meeting,
called people then.
African leaders trooped there by the dozens,
China.
by the 2 and 3 dozens.
Africa.
Yes.
And
people came back smiling and healthier.
But do you see what Eric is doing? Eric is saying that Mr. Putin, in this case, cares about...
Of course he does.
Cares.
He does.
He's calling, let's see how we can clean this up.
He does.
Self-interest.
We can sort you out. Of course, it's self-interest, but he's sorting
I believe
it out.
he cares. He cares. We cannot remove care from these activities entirely. what we can't remove is the element of belief.
Or who he cares for.
Yes.
That could be in debate, but he cares. The point is, he cares.
Yes.
And you're sticking with that story.
What
No,
came out of the talks
this guy isn't
yesterday
budging.
about the Queen of...
Right, what she wants or doesn't want for her family. There has been no official statement yet.
No, actually, there was.
What
Oh, sorry,
in
there
terms of what did she say in terms of
Let
what
me
I
look
didn't
for it.
actually catch that.
Let me look for it. There was let me look for it. So the statement from the Queen. It reads, Buckingham Palace's statement. Today, my family had very constructive discussions on the future of my grandson and his family. My family and I are entirely supportive of Harry and Meghan's desire to create a new life as a young family, and although we would have preferred them to remain full-time working members of the royal family, we respect and understand their wish to live a more independent life as a family while remaining a valued part of my family. Harry and Meghan have made clear that they do not want to be reliant on public funds in their own lives. It has therefore been agreed that there will be a period of transition in which the Sussexes will spend time in Canada and the UK. These are complex matters for my family to resolve, and there is some more work to be done, but I have asked for final decisions to be reached in the coming days.
Right, so
She has
nothing
said
has
it's
been
okay.
agreed on in terms of finality, but here they are saying, okay,
She's saying
in terms
it's
of,
okay. You
it's
guys want to
okay,
go? It's all right. I
can
I
tell
hear
you.
you.
I
See,
can-
that huge controversial bubble has been burst.
Burst.
So you see, the Queen has said, Sawa.
Sawa.
Matata
Nataka
kwanza.
kwenda.
Yes.
Sawa.
Cheers.
All right. Now look for your own money and go.
That is, I'm telling you, that is what is going to. You see the next few days in terms of finality. That in these next few days,
How much they're going to be
Tuesday,
given.
Wednesday, Thursday. Kitaeleweka.
Remember-
How much is rent? All right, we're doing 10% of that. How
Actually-
much is
No, Eric.
My great
So
grandson?
she'll feed her great
My
grandchild.
great grandson's school and education will be sorted. You too, your clothes,
No.
your underwear.
They draw from their father's estate.
Yeah,
This
it's
how it
Charles's
works.
estate. It's not her. It's Charles's estate.
Connie, who's his Charles's estate?
Charles
No,
is the
he has his.
second in line.
Yeah,
He
The way
has
these
his own.
people work, there are things that are given to you at a certain point in time, and they're actually yours. Yours. Like this particular castle, this particular country, this particular.
You've been given. It
Yours.
becomes yours. Kaa nayo.
So, in the next couple.
Yep.
In the next couple of days, we will know exactly how much. But look, I don't think either. I think she's slighted, of course, but
course.
definitely. But we're going to respect the wishes because I don't think she's looking for any kind of
folks, ask yourself a
tainting to
simple
come to the
question.
crown.
Which one do you think was a greater issue? Remember, his son Charles decided to hang out with his friend's wife.
Yeah, literally.
Ended up marrying
her.
Okay? Now, in the annals of controversies, which do you think is weightier? Which do you think would have caused more dust, more furor? All right? They weathered it. These people are bulletproof. This one is mild.
This is
And
nothing.
They want to go to
This is nothing.
Canada.
Her daughter-in-law was frolicking
nothing.
with princes,
Maybe
with
the only
Middle
thing that
Eastern
she said
princes.
is sign here.
Yes.
You are
all
not
over the
going-
world, and that they weathered to the
Yes.
point where her and her lover were actually murdered, as it were, and they weathered that as well.
They passed away under mysterious circumstances.
This one, water no pass, Gary.
It was an accident,
And we all saw it.
a road accident.
And we all saw
And
it.
we also
How is a road accident mysterious?
it's controversy.
You
that-
guys with your controversy and conspiracy.
No.
Hey, wait, so the story came out. So do we want
Okay.
to revisit it? How much
Okay.
time do we have?
They passed away.
All right.
There was a road accident. They passed away. Let's leave it at that. But they weathered that, did they not?
They did.
I'm saying
Yesterday, City, you were raising the issues of Mombasa County. I think today we'll continue that conversation for the next 1 hour. We'll be joined shortly by a businessman and politician and philanthropist Suleiman Shabal. He's a man who had vied to be a governor of Mombasa County twice now. He'll be joining us. He's a businessman. He has also writes. He's a columnist with the Standard newspaper. He writes articles on the Standard. And we'll be talking about the issues of coast, development of coast, the economic development in the coastal region, and also looking at Mombasa specifically and how Mombasa is faring and what he wanted to do when he wanted to become governor, what he would do if he still wants to become governor. You'll also ask him that question. The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. Stick around for that. It's coming up in the next hour. It's coming up to 7 o'clock. So shortly, we'll take a look at what's happening on the roads, and then we will join that conversation. Remember, you can join in on Spice FM KE Facebook, Spice FM KE Twitter, and we are live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke. Good morning.
Sugar.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
It's a mess already on Mombasa Road this morning. All the way from Syokimau at the SGR. It's leading us all the way down into the city centre. Unfortunately, not looking good this morning. Coming off of Thika Road as well, trying to join into the CBD using the Pangani underpass, joining towards Forest Road, or then joining towards the Globe Cinema roundabout. Traffic all the way and literally at a gridlock this morning. Coming off Langata Road and Ngong Road as well. Everybody joining at the City Mortuary roundabout. Quite a mess around the city. In some parts, of course, we're experiencing showers. So that means that the traffic situation will be compounded. I promise we'll take a look at Mombasa and Kisumu. We're going to have to do that in a short while. But for now, approach with caution, especially when you're getting towards Thika Road. In and outbound is causing us some serious problems this morning. Send us a message, give us a call, send us a tweet. Spice FMKE 0719 012 600 is the number to call. Let's keep everybody moving this morning. Help us where you can.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room. The only way to start...
2.5 minutes past 7 o'clock. Good morning and how are you doing? Welcome to The Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Of course, we broadcast from Nairobi on 94.4. We are in Eldoret, 96.7. Nakuru, 90.6.0. 102.5 in Kisumu. 90.9 in Nyeri. 97.7 in Malindi. And for you in Mombasa, we are on 87.9. Tuning in. Of course, now we are joined by the businessman and politician and philanthropist and writer and very many other things. Suleiman Shabal. Karibu sana and thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Asante sana, good morning.
Good morning to you. Now, let's first of all start off with an introduction. Who's Suleiman Shabal?
Kenyan.
ID number? Huduma number?
349099.
Is that enough?
Suleiman, you are a businessman. You also the chairman of the Kenya
CanTrade, yes.
The Kenya Trade Network Agency.
Yes.
What's that actually?
CanTrade is an organization set up to streamline processes for business people who are importing and exporting. So, for example, if you are importing anything into Kenya and you have to apply for 6 or 7 different permits, instead of running around 7 different organizations, you can do it online through one portal. Mm-hmm. Which means that it becomes much easier, much faster, and hopefully cheaper for you. And it's an organization that has tremendously improved the process of doing business, both import and export, and has, according to the World Bank, saved Kenya more than 24 billion shillings. It is particularly useful for business people and has helped the ease of doing business in Kenya. It's the way of the future now. I mean, everything is becoming online, and
you make everything seamless.
Yes,
a one-stop shop.
One-stop shop,
basically.
Yes.
So how exactly does it save, or how does it benefit the government? You mentioned a figure of certain billions.
Well, I'm more interested in the business community. You see, if you're importing today, or let's say you're exporting, and you need a permit from KEBS, you need a permit from 5 different agencies. You need a permit from a certificate of origin from Chamber of Commerce. Just take the example of the Chamber of Commerce. If you have to leave your office and take an Uber all the way to Chamber of Commerce and then spend another 3-4 hours there, and then get your permit, and then take an Uber back again. Can you imagine the time wasted?
Go to Mombasa Road and go to cabs.
Exactly. Yes. So it's a fantastic thing, and we have a bunch of young people there who are extremely motivated, very smart people. The online business is the way of the future, and Kenya is very much there, and it has improved. One of the reasons why the ease of doing business index, Kenya is rising up very fast in that index. It's good for the country.
So now let's also talk about your business interests and also your life in business before we move into the area of the coast region and Mombasa in particular. So just give us who are you in business? What do you do?
Oh man, I've been up and down in this business world. I've been bankrupt twice. I've tried so many things in life, but ultimately, after failing so many times, in the last maybe 10, 15 years, we managed to do a few things right. We set up a company called Gulf Energy in 2005. Gulf Energy was, up to December 2019, the fourth largest oil company. And we sold it to Rubis, the French company which bought Colonel Kobil. In 2008, we set up Gulf African Bank, which was Kenya's first Islamic bank. In 2014, we set up Gulf Power, which is the power plant in Athi River. Then we have Gulf Homes, Gulf Investment Company. And then we tried to set up the 1,000 megawatt Lamu coal plant, which ran into stormwaters. So we've done a few things in life. Before that, of course, I was employed. I worked for Citibank for many years. And then came to Kenya, did some business, went bust, went back again and got a job with a large bank in Oman as head of their international operations and ran that business successfully. Then set up an investment company in Dubai, raised more than $1 billion in different investments, and of course came back home. Like all good Kenyans. So 2010 I came back home and the country was changing, and I saw the opportunity to run for governor as an opportunity to bring in all this international experience and relationships and ideas. And I said, this is the best thing, let me run for governor. It was, in retrospect, a completely crazy thing, because, you don't just walk in and say, okay, I'm running for governor. People are saying, who's this guy? Never heard of him before. In fact, some people even thought that I wasn't even born in Mombasa.
Or that you were not even a Kenyan.
I wasn't even a Kenyan. Who's this guy from Dubai who suddenly wants to run?
How many years were you away from Kenya?
Oh my God, for a long time, more than 25 years.
Great.
But I always came back. You see, every year I came back, and then from 1996 to the year 2000, I actually came back home and tried to do business and went bust spectacularly.
So did you think that you talked about the things that you did, obviously.
Yes.
Was that not enough to be governor of Mombasa? Did you think that what more was needed? You talk about now about an obvious disconnect between yourself and the people. They didn't understand who you were.
It wasn't a disconnect. It was more like, things change. Okay, so the Mombasa that I grew up in and the Mombasa that I came back and saw were two different worlds. And that is partly the reason why it disturbed me so much to see how badly the city had sunk. Yet I recognize that every single problem we had was actually an opportunity. And that with good leadership and good ideas and mobilizing the different interests in the city could help turn around that city. That's why I ran for governor.
This is why you decided to run for governor?
That's why I decided to run for governor, yes.
And like you said, it was a crazy idea at that point. What is it?
You have to be crazy. Only crazy people change the world.
All right.
Okay.
Only crazy people. If you don't have the guts to change or to challenge the status quo, nothing happens. then life continues as normal. And if the trend is downwards, it will continue going downwards.
You're a man who seems to accept when things don't go your way. Like you're talking about your businesses and you tried business and it failed spectacularly in your own words. Would you use the same words for the 2013 campaign for governor?
2013, in my view and according to the numbers that we saw, we actually won that election, but we were rigged beautifully.
Rigging, that's something that happens in Kenya?
You're one of those politicians as well.
And I didn't know how to run the elections. So those guys took us to the cleaners. Okay, 2017 was a different story. Okay, contrary to what many of my supporters say, I think Joho actually beat us hands down in 2017. But in 2017, we won that election.
Can I ask you something? You
Yes.
just said that you didn't know how to run the election. What does that mean?
To win an election in Kenya, you need two things. And let's be very bluntly honest about
Yes,
this.
please. Yes.
Number one, you have to get the popular vote. Number two, you have to make sure that on election day, your votes are not stolen and the numbers are not changed. So don't go out there campaigning thinking that the popular vote is enough to get you elected. No,
You've got to protect the vote.
You've got to protect the vote and to some extent
Pad it up.
find a way to improve the numbers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That is the reality of Kenyan
What is
politics. And
finding-
anybody who tells you otherwise is not being honest.
Let's use more direct words.
Yes.
Suleiman. What is finding a way to improve your numbers?
Steal the vote.
Oh.
Okay. Now, I know that this is not a popular thing, but let me tell you something. Let's be honest, okay, as Kenyans. Every single election in this country, one way or another, is stolen. Now, one time I did something spectacularly stupid, okay? This was 2nd of January, somewhere in Kilifi. And I came up with a statement that was, very badly misunderstood. I said, kama ni kuiba, kama ni kununua. That was a direct translation from English. Beg, borrow, or steal.
Let's get in this.
Let's get it
But
done.
when stated in Kiswahili,
When translated into Kiswahili, sounds
Kama ni
incredibly
kuiba, kama
bad.
ni kununua.
Yeah, kama ni whatever, okay? English, when sometimes translated into English, there's an English expression when you're about to go on stage, it says break a leg.
Yeah.
Right.
Break a leg, translated
break
to
a leg.
Swahili, uvunjike mguu. Hey. So, but unfortunately, that's the reality in Kenyan politics.
What was the reaction to that statement that you made in Kilifi?
Oh, I mean, my opponents pounced all over it,
Yeah.
okay? And they deliberately made sure that it was broadcast and rebroadcast and debated, and including KTN. You guys did a massive interview on this thing. And I was always wondering why nobody called me and said, okay, you said this. What did exactly did you
What
mean?
exactly
You know?
did you mean?
But anyway, that's water under the
Okay,
bridge.
so let's
and,
ask. No. I
you know,
would be very interested now at this point to say,
Yeah.
at that point, then what exactly did you mean? Because obviously it influenced your particular politics for some time in terms of what then people saw you as.
Yes, it did.
What did you mean?
I just said it's an English expression that says beg, borrow, or steal.
That
which
is how
means
elections
Whatever
are,
it takes.
That is how elections are won in Kenya.
which means that you will use every single effort. Okay, if you have to borrow, it's an English expression that
I
means
understand
you'll
the
throw
expression.
every
that you will
effort
leave
into
no
it.
stone unturned.
Unturned.
That you will leave no
Whether
stone
it's legal or
unturned.
illegal.
Yes.
Or illegal, rather.
No. Now I think you're trying to corner me on that, on that point.
No. I really want
Eric,
to
I thought
understand.
this was a friendly interview.
Actually, it's really
Very
very friendly.
It is friendly.
Because we are discussing politics
getting
here.
friendly corner.
But what I was saying in the beginning,
Yeah.
okay, is that we have seen, or rather, I have seen so many elections deliberately stolen at the polling station or at the tallying station. Okay, I remember a senior politician telling me point blank, nobody steals in the field; it's stolen in the granary. So, my friend, if you are going to win an election, jipange kwa granary. What do you think that means?
So then were you ready in 2017?
No.
2017.
Unfortunately, if you don't know how to steal, it's very difficult to learn how to steal.
So even if
You had 5
even
years
after
to
you
learn.
learned
We
the lesson
tried-
from 2013,
we
it
tried-
was
I want to ask you a
possible in
different question.
Yeah, we
2017.
tried very hard
But you couldn't.
to protect our votes.
Okay.
Okay. But people who know how to steal in different ways. We're watching the counting of the vote very closely, and then suddenly you see on the computer different numbers are showing up. Say, whoa!
It's like magic.
Nobody thought about
So
that.
what you're saying is that many of these things are pre-rigged.
Many of them are.
Okay. Now let me ask you a different question. When you present yourself to the electorate
Yes.
on 2 occasions,
Yes.
would it be fair to say that the unspoken statement you're making is that you can do this job of governorship better than the person who's actually doing it?
Yes, that's why you're running. If
These-
I'm running against you, it's basically a statement that I'm saying that I can do this job better than you.
Now, this better,
Yes.
how would you encapsulate it?
It's identifying the opportunities in the country or in the county that we have and to see how we can make them happen. Opportunities can be intellectual ideas. Intellectual ideas don't create jobs. Okay. You have to take an idea and make it happen. And to make something happen, you need to mobilize not just the ideas, but the people behind it, and to find the money to get it done, and to put a drive behind that momentum to make it happen. So, for example, I'm extremely passionate about the Dongokundu Free Zone. And I have been for the last 10 years, more than 10 years. But that's an idea. Now, to make that happen, you need to push government of Kenya first to make it happen. Then you need to find investors who will put in money into this thing. Then you have to start creating a marketing strategy to make it happen. Then you need to start preparing the vijana who are going to come and work there. No point bringing in investors, and now they're looking for welders, and there are no welders in Mombasa.
You need to have a ready workforce.
You need to have a ready workforce. And then you need to continuously market it internally and externally until it becomes a song. So the minute people hear the word Mombasa, the next thing they hear is
Dongokundu, special economic
Dongokundu
zone.
Free Zone. That's how you take an idea from a thought to reality. It doesn't happen by accident. Things don't happen. Waswahili wanasema kikiolea kinaundwa. When something, you see a boat floating, it didn't float by accident. It was carved. It was somebody put it together and made it happen. So
With expertise.
And not necessarily your expertise. It could be the expertise of 10 other people.
Yeah.
But I have to come and convince you and cajole you and seduce you into joining this bandwagon. That's what leadership is all about. It's like I always say, leadership is a function of 3 things: enable, empower, and vision. You have to have a vision of where you want to go. Enable the people to do it. So find the money to do it. And empower. Get people and tell them, make it happen.
All right. So 2 times you were not able to get this seat for whatever reasons.
Yes.
How do you see Mombasa as a very important city in this country, in my opinion, and I think in the opinions of quite a number of people, in terms of what it should be able to do for the country? I want to understand how you feel the country, how the county is faring now.
The county is, like I said a couple of months back, it's on the verge of death. Okay.
Wow. Last breaths?
No, it's a county in serious problems. And let's face it, we have serious problems. We have serious economic problems. Massive unemployment. A lot of properties are now unrented. A lot of businesses are leaving Mombasa. And the consequence of that is a lot of increasing joblessness. We have increasing youth restlessness, which is leading to all this violence that you're hearing. Where else do you hear of a bunch of 20, 30 people
attacking
and
people disappearing
for no reason? Okay,
Causing mayhem. Yes.
Causing mayhem, other than in Mombasa. Okay, You have radicalization increasing. All these are symptoms of helplessness. And it needs to be arrested. It needs to stop. And the only way to make this a stop is a combination of economic recovery and better social cohesion among people. And you can talk as much as you want about peace and prosperity and happiness, but if people don't have jobs, if youth don't have jobs, that is the start of all problems.
What role does the leadership of the county have to play in all of this?
The role of the
Why
leadership...
don't you ask it more directly? Do you think the governor can be held responsible for these problems you just mentioned?
I think it's more than just the governor. Okay, the governor is like the conductor, the choir master.
He's the driver, Suleiman. No. The choir master is somebody else. The governor is the chief executive of the county.
Correct. Well, let me give
Perspective, eh?
let me give my brother Hassan Ali Joho some rope kidogo. Okay, I think he's trying, but the systematic problems are much bigger than that. And I think there needs to be a local effort and the county and the government effort as well. And personally, I have said this many times. I think the government, the national government, has somehow given the county of Mombasa a bounced check.
In what way?
In the sense that the economic priorities of Mombasa have not really been given the importance that they deserve.
What are these?
Okay?
What are these
wait,
priorities?
let me say one thing, okay? The same formula for revenue allocation that has been used for every single county is the same that's being applied for Mombasa. But Mombasa is not just Mombasa. Mombasa is the gateway to Kenya. It's the gateway to East Africa. It should have been given a little bit more priority because we carry the burden of the whole of Kenya. That has never been recognized and that has never really been appreciated. Okay. And look at when you arrive into Mombasa, that distance from the airport or from Changamwe Airport into Mombasa is less than 3 kilometers. And for the last 50 years, that road has never been made. Come on, man. I mean, look at Nairobi. Every street of Nairobi is being rebuilt. You mean you can't find the funds to build a small, simple road? And that is where all the tourists come in. That's where everybody comes in. President arrives, he drives down the same road. But what do you think that is?
The road from the airport is being done.
Something
Are you
as
talking
simple
about
as that doesn't need to be shrouded in any kind of ambiguity. It's something that needs to be said. This needs to be done. 1, 2, let's go.
We have said it 100 times. Okay, we've said it 100 times.
So what new thing then will be said?
What road are you talking
about? The distance. Wait,
clear,
Eric. The distance from Shemolatewa Bridge, okay, to the Likoni ferry is 13 kilometers. Until today, 56 years after independence, it's a single lane road.
It's a single lane road, yes. Despite all the expansion and the growth of that entire region from Shanzu all the way.
Precisely.
And you still say you want to give the county executive some rope.
Whose responsibility is that? Unfortunately, that budget falls under the national
budget. National government.
Yes.
But also it's a job of the local leadership to champion
to push
for that, to advocate.
Okay,
absolutely.
Okay, that's why I'm saying. You know,
I don't. No. When these roads that are being built within Nairobi, which MP or which governor is pushing for these roads to be built?
Thank you. I appreciate
Which
your
are the ones for Nairobi?
here.
No, yes, all these expansion of whether it's Agwing Skodek, whether it's Ngong Road, they're being expanded.
We have Balala with a regeneration committee. So we have the
this
county.
Committee,
we have the
when
county
did it come into force, Eric?
In 2017.
Precisely.
2018.
Which part of the Ministry of Roads? Is it Kura? Is it Kenha? Who is in charge of it?
It's actually Kenha.
So there's
Precisely.
Kenha for the main
So
highways.
who
It's Kenya-
pushes
it's
for
Kenha
it?
for the main
And they keep
highways.
building them. No. I'm afraid Mr. Shabal has a point there.
So the roads, okay, if you talk about that road, the
He has a
road
point
going
and a
to,
valid one.
that's the road going to Malindi. That's, of course, it's a national
How long
highway.
did it take to build a thick super highway?
Just about 5 years.
Precisely. And are you telling me that the one place in this country that houses probably the largest number of tourists that you see have that sort of road where when you have a congestion, it's a gridlock?
So if we're going to say that this is one of the problems that we see, something like infrastructure in the county of Mombasa, and obviously is the purview of the national government.
It is.
What then needs to happen to get down, Mombasa back in the eye, or
To get the national government
to see the importance of this county?
Let's talk about Dongo Kundu, because that is the one project that will dramatically change the economy of the coast. Okay, The road to Dongo Kundu is being built now. Thank you very much. After 10 years. But anyway, to Nakuru. Okay. Nothing is being done on the ground right now. And to build something that big and that massive, we're going to make the same mistakes that are being done in Lamu. They built the baths, but no roads and no infrastructure behind it. Now, for Dongo Kundu to happen, you need the road, you need the infrastructure to start simultaneously. The training of the people needs to start simultaneously, because a few years down the road, the place is ready. Investors are coming and they say, okay, we need 500 welders, 300 electricians, 200 masons. Hakuna.
You don't have even a database of people who are qualified.
No marketing has started. So, for a large investor to come and build something in a place like the free zone, there's a time lag. There's a 3 to 4 year time lag. People start planning for these things 3-4 years down the road. We're going to invest $10 million to build this thing. We're now in 2020. This thing will be ready in 2024. So we start from now. Zero marketing. So I'm just wondering what's happening here.
What's the plan?
What's the plan?
So we have the Dongo Kundu road being done, but nothing about the special economic zone. You're saying there's nothing on the ground.
The laws need to be changed because there is some ambiguity between the EPZ and the special economic zone laws. When I was on vacation last month, I saw something that had been done. I haven't read it, so maybe it's been done, but I doubt. Okay. That sort of thing a bit more seriousness needs to be put into it. I'm seeing a lot of focus going on into Naivasha today.
Yeah.
And my friend, the governor of Naivasha, Lee Kinyanju, is encouraging me to invest in Naivasha. Say, my friend, charity begins at home, one.
You have to look back at...
But I'm now looking at Naivasha and it's being developed, and I'm wondering why we
that is
ignoring... No, it's good it's happening in Naivasha. But the national priority should be at the port, because that's where Kenya has the most competitive advantage. And let me repeat that. Kenya has the most competitive advantage, not just Mombasa. Okay,
It's the entire country.
it's the entire country. And Kenya, whether we like... Mombasa today... 40-50% are people from all over Kenya. They are no longer just people from Mombasa and the coast. So Mombasa is the microcosm of Kenya today. So if you build Mombasa, you're building Kenya. We need a change of thinking at the national level. Okay, look at Masai Mara. Some of the revenues of Masai Mara automatically go to the county government. The revenues of oil from Turkana are going to the county government. I strongly believe the revenues from
the port of Mombasa,
a certain percentage of that must go to the county of Mombasa.
This is a conversation that has actually been championed by the leadership of that region for many years.
In fact, the region wants the port.
Total ownership of the port.
Exactly.
Why is that? I mean, it's a national resource.
That's the that's the constitution.
It's a natural. The natural resource becomes the national resource. Once it becomes the national resource,
constitution. Eric, that's the constitution.
We are not nationalizing the oil in Turkana.
No, I
the constitution does not say that the oil in Turkana becomes theirs.
I didn't say
Why
that.
don't you explain what you mean when you say the constitution?
That is the constitution that we promulgated in 2010.
What does it say about?
Ports belong to the county. That's the constitution. That's not my point of view. It's not an opinion.
I need to actually look into that.
Please do.
So because if the constitution says that, then what?
There's a case in court on that.
I was about to ask you that. Why
there's
haven't
a
you
case
moved to
in court. People have moved to court. Personally, I think that may be a bit of an overreach, because you're right, it is a national asset, but it is also logical that a certain percentage of the revenues of the port should be
channeled back to the local.
Actually,
because
I don't actually agree with you. It isn't an overreach. It's just a statement of fact. I mean, this is a resource. Without the resource and without the geographical positioning of that particular county, the resource wouldn't be within that county.
Exactly.
It stands to reason that whatever benefits accrue from this national establishment the local entity should also benefit.
I mean, we've seen that conflicts have
100% agree.
have arisen around the world because of something like this. That the local people in a particular area, who obviously are closest, are in close proximity to this resource, then should be able to benefit as first-hand benefactors to this resource. And there's a reason why, what we're saying is that it has been put in the Constitution. There's a reason.
Why don't we draw a parallel with other resources that, say, other counties have, like, say, coffee?
No, yeah, let's talk about...
When it goes belly up, the government always has a recovery plan for them and the people in the tea industry.
I'd look at you see, coffee is grown. I'd look at a natural resource. The county government of Murang'a has been arguing that the water that comes to Nairobi should also benefit the people of Murang'a. In fact, they've been saying that Murang'a should be the one that's selling the water to Nairobi. I think when you start opening these things,
No,
you're opening a
it
can
isn't
of worms.
opening. It isn't
It's a can of worms.
Eric,
No. I don't think it's
Eric,
a
it
can
isn't
of
a can
worms.
of worms.
There has to be some benefit to Murang'a. You see, Nairobi sells at water.
yes.
It's not given away free. It sells at water. So
Then
if it sells at water, Murang'a should benefit.
Yes.
We'll start talking about the catchment
Yes.
areas in there, but
Yes,
Yes,
so the
and we
Abadeas
should.
is
we
not
should
in
have those
Murang'a,
conversations
And we
around the
should.
country, regardless of
And
what
we
it is,
should.
and we'll begin to see that more and more communities then benefit from the resource because of their proximity to it. I think so. I think these are conversations that need to be had then around resources in this country, and probably some of the conflict that we see back and forth will not happen because that kind of allocation is given top priority. It's important to have.
Let's take a
Excellent.
look
So
at-
I think there's now consensus here that some of the benefit of the port should stay in Mombasa.
Yeah.
It should.
yeah.
And without question,
I
it
hope
should.
somebody senior in government is listening to this.
They do listen.
They do listen.
Okay.
They do listen to this. I know that this is a discussion that the leadership of Mombasa have actually raised very many times. I am one of those guys who's still on the fence on this particular one because I'm wondering, all right, so when we open up, when do we stop? But we'll continue this conversation. Let's first take a look at what's happening on the roads. We have in the studio on the hot seat this morning, our guest today is Suleiman Shabal. He's a businessman, he's a politician, he's a philanthropist, he's a writer, he's a columnist with the Standard newspaper. He's a man who has vied twice to be the governor of Mombasa County. We'll ask him whether he wants to vie again to be the governor of Mombasa County. And of course, he's talking to us about issues pertaining to economic development in Mombasa. He says Mombasa is on the verge of death, and what it requires is some economic recovery and cohesion of the people. And he's saying the national government has been giving the Mombasa County a bouncing check. This is some of the conversation that we're having. Of course, we'll be opening up the phone lines for you people in around the country to join in, especially the people in Mombasa, to put in your questions and comments to Suleiman Shabal. Good morning, 27 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM.
All right, let's look at different parts of the city right now. John Home Savannah and Outering interchange to Lunga Lunga Road are moving very, very slowly this morning through all parts of industrial area. Okay, something infected somewhere today and nothing is moving. Mombasa Road is unusual. Usually it is bumper to bumper, but today it actually is terrible on Mombasa Road, and that's inbound to the city. And there probably is an issue, but we don't know what that is right now. Ngong to Karen is a parking lot, unfortunately, and interestingly enough, going in the opposite direction. Suspected accident up the road. We'll find out details about that shortly, but if you're approaching the area, know that there's some traffic up ahead. Thika Road from the Thika Road Mall is crazy apparently in both directions, going towards the city center and also going towards Roy Sambo. So Kaha West also, we have a problem there, also knowing that we have the developing issue round around Mwiki and Kasarani this morning. There's some light showers in parts of the city. This will affect traffic. Let's see what it looks like in a short while, but for now, send us a tweet, Spice FM KE, or give us a call 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
25 to 8. Good morning and thank you for joining us. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have CT Muga, Nduoko, and Suleiman Shabal, Mombasa politician. Now, we're talking about what's been happening in Mombasa. Of course, yesterday we saw, every Monday, we know that there have been protests in Mombasa over the issue of moving the ICDs to Suswa, and also, of course, the order to have all the cargo transported straight onto the SGR. Now, I saw that you had written some time back on the Standard, where you write every Tuesdays, and you said that this issue is not new, and there's a different way that Mombasa businessmen should be looking at it.
Maybe 3-4 years before SGR started, I called for a meeting of some of the top transporters in Mombasa. And I asked them, how are you preparing for SGR? SGR is coming. And we had a heated argument. They said, no, it's not going to affect us. I said, how can it not affect you? Because at that point in time, the contractual understanding was that 40% of the cargo from Mombasa would go by SGR. As a businessman, it seemed logical to me that if you lose 40% market share overnight, of course it's going to affect your business. But it seemed that the transporters had their heads buried in the sand. And then, of course, the train literally hit them. Okay. So that was unfortunately unpreparedness on the part of the transporters. They had not seen the full impact of that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe looking back in retrospect, I should have commissioned a study at that time. Instead of it just being an opinion from Suleiman, businessman stroke politician, if I'd given them a professional study and said, gentlemen, this is the study. This is the impact that we have seen in 5 different countries. It's going to hit you. So it was a failure on the part of the business community at that point in time, and a failure on the part of the political community, or of the political leadership, to highlight the impact and to sort of preparing
them,
preparing the country, the county for that sort of event that was going to happen. It's not something that might happen. It was definitely going to happen. Now, fast forward to what happened recently, where the government says, okay, 100% of the cargo. Now, that is wrong.
It's draconian.
It's draconian. It goes against the business principles that we believe in of free market. Let the market decide. Why should I, as an importer, be forced to have my container put on a SGR if it is cheaper for me to put it on
The road.
On a truck.
On a truck. Let it be free market. Let it compete. Our contractual obligation in the SGR contract, 40% of the cargo. Give them 40% of the cargo. The remaining 60%, let it be open to competition.
How can you assure that 40% if you are the government?
Let me ask a different
if
question.
you let the
before
market
you
forces,
get there.
yes.
Is the SGR able to manage all transporting all the containers efficiently and effectively? All these containers that come to Mombasa, are they able to?
No, it's not. You see, right now there's massive congestion in Nairobi.
At the ICD?
At the ICD. And by their own admission, it's not big enough to manage all this thing. But this is typical of all governments, not just Kenya government. They make a ruling, and then after that,
They deal with the consequences later.
Then we'll deal with the problems later. You know.
And they call them teething problems.
Teething problems.
For 40 years.
Unfortunately, our teeth are falling out in Mombasa.
Yeah.
Okay. And somehow that has never really been relooked at properly, you know. And the economic impact in Mombasa is really bad, because the transport sector contributes roughly 8% to the GDP of Mombasa. That's a substantial amount.
How much?
8%. And I think the number of jobs that have been lost is more than 10,000 jobs. Now, for an economy like Mombasa, when you lose 10,000 jobs, it means 10,000 people can no longer afford to pay rent. That means 10,000 houses or rooms are suddenly becoming
Actually,
vacant.
if you look at them
Yes.
as households,
yes.
and then look at the average number of people in a household,
Yeah.
the number is a
You
bit
multiply
alarming.
that number.
Yes, it's alarming.
Yes, it's alarming.
So I was actually asking, how would you, if we look at the contract? So the contract says that we must have 40% of the cargo transported via SGR. If you're the national government and you're the one who signed this contract, how would you ensure that you get this 40%?
Any large infrastructure project needs to have a certain minimum guaranteed revenue. Otherwise, it won't work. So for government to guarantee something like that is part of business.
So it makes sense to you.
It makes sense.
Right.
I mean, it's normal commercial sense. You can't expect anything less than that. But we should have been preparing the business community for this. The business community should have been anticipating this. And then when you take away something so drastic from an economy, you have to put something back in its place. Otherwise, you're going to create the mess that we're seeing right now. Now, if national government had not done this, the local political establishment should have anticipated this and says, wait a minute, this is going to happen. And this, to what I said before, I also take part of the blame for that. I saw this coming from an economic point of view, but I didn't sort of push myself intellectually to think, okay, what's next?
What's next?
And what do we offer next? And commissioning a study to anticipate the economic and social impact of this is something that should have been done by the national level, and if
And
not
the
by
county
the
government as
and the
well.
county
And
and the
the local
county
politicians.
and the local leadership. And I blame myself also for that.
Oftentimes
Yeah.
we ask ourselves,
Yeah.
even just sitting in this room, and we say that in order for some change to happen, or some of these things that you're saying need to be done, should have been done, when you look in retrospect, that you need a leader in a position who is going to be focused and driven and going to do something about it. Do you see yourself in position of leadership again in Mombasa? Do you see yourself putting yourself out there again, whether it's at governor, whatever level?
Well, I think the fact that I ran for governor twice, by default, automatically puts me in a position of leadership. in
Oh, you
Mombasa.
are?
Okay.
Now, definitely, that's what I'm saying. Now, to be at the point where you're making executive decisions at a county or national level.
Unfortunately, I didn't win the governorship, so I don't have that executive authority.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Will you run for office again?
You're trying to dodge this question.
Yeah. Will you run for office again? Because
20
these things that you're,
He's
these
a
things that you're talking
self-declared
about,
politician, so
these
he's
things you're
responding
talking about,
the way a politician would.
these things you're
20
talking about
Yeah.
are obvious solutions that you have for the problems that are dogging the county of Mombasa. Whether it's businessmen, whether it is people in private business, individuals, small and medium-sized enterprises, these are the problems that they're facing. And in order to raise the profile of the county, something needs to be done.
Yes.
Will you put yourself up for election again?
In 2010, I made a solitary decision to run for governor, and then got the people behind me. This time, I want to do it the other way around. I want to see whether the community will want me to run.
So you're waiting for the people to tell you.
No, it's not quite. I know that
The
that's
poli-
how the
the-
typical
the
politician
politician
says, "Oh, watu wameniambia nisimame." No,
voice of the people.
Voice of the people have now demanded no. But to win an election is not just. It's not just like I said. It's not just the people. There's the people. There's the party. There's many things. Okay. 2022, Mombasa is still an ODM zone. Okay. Strongly an ODM zone. Can I win without being on an ODM ticket? Those are some of the factors that
So the
one has
realities
to-
that you're facing.
It's the realities that you have to face. Okay. At 2017, the answer was no. At 2022, the answer may still be no, but the answer may be yes. So the realities on the ground will dictate a lot of things at that point in time.
Are you
Okay.
aligning yourself with the ODM brigade? So we saw in the first election, were you in Wiper in the first?
I was on Wiper, yes.
And then in the second one, you were in Jubilee.
I was in Jubilee, yes.
So it's not, impossible for you to be in ODM or whatever grouping it will be that will be supporting Raila Odinga in 2022.
Mombasa, they have a nice saying that siasa si dini. Okay, siasa si dini.
You're not stuck.
You're not stuck.
Politics is not a religion.
Oh, voila.
Politics is not a religion, yes. And as far as I'm concerned, the position that I will take is what suits Mombasa at that point in time,
Okay.
not at the national level. Okay, because we've seen that as politics is local. So it is what is happening on the ground and what the people on the ground want that will determine which position we take.
Can I ask you,
Yes.
from your point of view, what do the people of Mombasa want? Because there's hue and cry from different sectors now, whether it's business, whether it's, what do the people of Mombasa want from your understanding? What do the people of Mombasa want? And what do they need?
The people of Mombasa feel that they have been taken for granted.
Shortchanged.
Okay, taken for
By
granted.
local or national?
National. I just told you, 56 years after independence, they can't find the money to build a small 13
Pwani Sea,
kilometer road.
Kenya.
13-kilometer road. Okay. These arbitrary decisions being done, with SGR. Okay, we can understand the national imperative and the national importance of SGR, but it also has huge
Impact at the local level.
at the ground level. So those things reflect an insensitivity to the needs of the county of Mombasa. Okay, the inability to aggressively drive Dongokundu, while we see Naivasha being aggressively driven, tells us something about how seriously Mombasa is being taken. So come 22, you're asking me which side will be on. My answer is going to be
The side of the people.
Eric, you're being flippant now. But what I'm really saying is the people of Mombasa at that point in time will say, okay, which of the national parties really wants to drive Mombasa?
Right.
That is the party that we will side with.
I've got some comments here coming in on Facebook. This
Yes.
one is from Abu Mashar Isa, who says, Shabal, I voted for you twice, and I will vote for you again, God willing. But I'd like you to enlighten us. Number one, how would you spur development at the interior parts of Mombasa? You have not connected well with the people at the interior parts of Mombasa. Number two, how are you going to protect the Mombasa County government from cartels who are now stealing from Mombasa people in the name of tendering where billions are lost? Number three, we have not seen a single development project from the current county government. What did you personally come up with to spur economic development? And number four, infrastructure such as roads are in a deplorable condition. Security is wanting. Taps are ever dry. The city has been turned into garbage city. What are you going to do about all these things?
Those seem to be the problems of the Mombasa. Those seem to be the problems of the people of Mombasa.
That's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I kept saying for the last 10 years, the most important priority for the city of Mombasa and for the coast is the establishment of the special economic zone in Dongokundu. So if I come in as governor, that is something that I will be literally singing every single day. And God help whoever is president of Kenya at that point in time, because I will bug him on this issue
The
so
pressure
much.
he'll face.
The pressure that he will face,
Or she.
publicly or privately,
There will be no she.
from the governor of Mombasa will be enormous. Okay. Number two, he said that the interior of Mombasa. I don't know what he's referring to as the interior of Mombasa.
I guess he means other areas apart from
Other
the
areas
islands.
apart from the,
Mombasa is a cosmopolitan city. We don't have that much agriculture other than in the Mwakirunge area. And that's a relatively dry area. So actually the most important part of the development of Mombasa is industrialization, is in services, is in the transport sector. And that's why we come back to the special economic zone as a priority. Okay, that's how we will create jobs. And a focus on preparing the city for these opportunities. So there's no point in having this economic zone coming up and then jobs are being advertised, and we have 100,000 youths. Not one of them is qualified. Okay, so there is a need to put these things together. Of course, this issue of the cartels and all that, this is the corruption that we have across the country. It's not just in Mombasa. And I saw something very interesting in Dubai. Dubai has something called tijari.com. Which is their procurement portal. Now, if they're advertising for televisions, they'll put the specifications there. Everybody puts his tender on the portal. So I will see your price, and I'll see her price, and everybody will see it's completely transparent.
Wow.
Okay. 2 days before the tender closes, they allow everybody to change their prices. So if Eric is offered at 15,000,
And you can see.
and I can see Eric is offered at 15, I can now change my offer to 13. So you literally put the procurement process in the public arena. That's exactly what I would do. And the entire finances of the city of Mombasa would be live on the internet. And why not? This is public money. So why are you being secretive about how this money is
How
being
money is
spent?
being spent.
Okay.
Mr.
Now, if I have no intention of stealing, okay,
Then
and
it
I have
should
no
be fine.
intention of winning any
tender yourself.
tender myself, there's no good reason why this should not be completely out in the public domain. Now, some people will tell you, oh, but you can only do this with small tenders. Nonsense. The National Oil Corporation put $4.5 billion of tenders on the internet. Technology is what's going to reduce corruption in this country.
Or enhance it.
How would you see it being enhanced?
Well,
with technology?
the technology has to be managed and manned by human beings. And so long as people in positions of authority in this country think the way they do, you see, what I was getting at when I semi-interrupted Mheshimiwa, I was going to say, you see, I like what he's saying. Even if you listen to the things he said in the past, they sound very good. But so do the things that many politicians say before they get to office. And then they get to office. You gave His Excellency Joe a pass and said he's trying. Sorry, for me that isn't enough. His job isn't to try.
It is to do.
If a citizen of that county has indicated that there are issues, he can't be the only person who knows their issues.
Yeah.
You cannot be talking about the things you'd do better if there weren't things which were not being done as they should. The malaise and the issues we have within the county, the government has to take some blame for
The
it.
buck must stop somewhere, and it stops in the
It
office of
can't
the
be-
government.
What the national government has done is basically simple, pure marginalization that is clearly understood. But the governor has to take some responsibility for some of the things that are happening within that county.
We all have to take responsibility.
Not everyone
Okay.
is the CEO of the county.
Correct. I mean, he has his own.
He has a lion's share of the responsibility.
He has a lion's share of whatever has not happened in Mombasa. But like I said, ultimately we all have a certain responsibility. I gave you an example. I should have seen what is going to happen at SGR, and I should have done something a little bit more, maybe. Okay.
I understand, and I even agree with you.
Yes.
But look, there's something that we're discussing in this very forum yesterday, and it's about the ministers within that county, the inspectorate, the service board. It's odd. When His Excellency first came into that position, all these things were in place. There were appointments, it was functioning. Now, he seems to be acting against his own interest. This is what I find odd. Because he's not a man who doesn't understand what needs to be done. This guy is a politician. He understands. But right now, if I look at the things that are in the media, the man apparently takes a chopper to town. He's hardly ever seen. I'm thinking, it's odd.
Has he abandoned the
No,
county?
no, it's odd. This is a man who's politically savvy. There's no question about it. It's odd. And I'm repeating, it is odd. A man seems to be acting against his own personal interest.
It doesn't make sense.
Yes, you have positioned yourself as somebody who supports the governor. Can you explain this?
That's a very interesting position you said. You're a man who supports the governor. I fought the governor two campaigns.
Twice.
Two campaigns, my friend. But the position that I took after the 2017 election is that confrontational politics with the governor after he has been sworn in and after he has won is not going to help. So I tried, or I'm trying, or I'm engaging in the politics of engagement rather than confrontation with the governor. And on many issues that I have a strong opinion on, I discuss them with the governor. But I'm not the governor.
He is.
He is. So if there are issues that you feel very strongly about, I think it is better you take them up with him. We may disagree on a lot of the things that he's doing, okay? But But we are discussing on a lot of things that need to be done.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me take some more questions on social media.
Yeah.
Ask him if he now thinks it was a mistake to align with the powers that be in 2019. He asked whether his mistake in 2017 was aligning with Jubilee when Mombasa seemed so pro ODM. Do you look back in retrospect and see, well, my alignment at that point cost me this election?
Of course, it cost me this election.
But there's nothing else that you could have done. I mean, there was already an ODM deputy party leader who was your opposition. What could you have done?
Yes, but see, that's the whole point. You know, if you know the politics of any large urban area, and in Mombasa today, or even in Nairobi, you're either with us or against us. Mm-hmm. Okay, and there are two big forces. There is the ODM brigade, and there's the Jubilee brigade. You belong to one of the two. And unfortunately, when election time comes, you know, like today, you'll find a lot of people criticizing the president and all this. But the day that Firimbi is blown,
they all fall in line.
Together.
they will all fall strictly behind party lines. Okay?
Party or tribal?
Both.
Okay.
Unfortunately, a lot of
That
the
was
parties have
synonymous,
become
I think.
tribal.
You know very well, in this
Yeah,
country, they are synonymous.
So they will fall strictly behind party lines. I mean, I saw this in 2013. You know, people would criticize Joho and attack him and this and this and that. And sometimes I would even actually feel a little sorry for him.
Mm-hmm.
My friend, 3 months before the election, as soon as he put on that orange
He
T-shirt,
forgot about it.
all those
changed.
people who were attacking him forgot all about
And
it.
they were friends.
And they voted solidly behind party lines. So the luxury of running as an independent in a cosmopolitan city is a high-risk strategy.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to take you back.
Yes.
There was this mention of the coal plant.
Yes.
At the time when one read about it or what was written about it, it sounded like, to me, a good plan. What happened?
It is a good plan. You see, people talk about the coal plant as if we were going to poison the people of Lamu. Okay, I'm originally from Lamu. My mother is from Lamu, and I kept telling the people of Lamu, one day I'm going to be buried 6 foot under like everybody else. Do you think I want to go to meet my Lord with my conscience that I deliberately poisoned these people? The whole politics of the coal plant is it's being driven by these Mzungus who own big houses in Lamu, and they come there 2 weeks in a year, and they want to visit a city untarnished by development. Look at the choice of words, untarnished by development. Okay, yet here was something that was going to dramatically change the economy of
the
Lamu.
region.
Okay, 200 billion shillings. 40% was going to go into local content. That's 80 billion shillings. For heaven's sake, the budget of Lamu is 2 billion. That's 40 years budget going into Lamu, okay? But more important, it would have ended the use of charcoal, the use of kerosene, the use of firewood. Our biggest problem in Kenya is deforestation, and that's actually our biggest environmental problem, deforestation and the use of charcoal and kerosene in homes. And more important, if we do not have cheap power in this country, this question of industrialization becomes a pipe dream. That project would have helped bring industrialization into Kenya and created the millions of jobs that we need. So it was driven by environmentalists to suit them. And, you know, they talked about, Lamu is a historical city. This thing was 26 kilometers away. You know, you are a few kilometers from the airport. Can you see the tower from here? You can't.
And
Okay.
the JKI is about 20 kilometers from the CBD.
Exactly. That is 26 kilometers away from
Lamu.
From
Let's
Lamu.
take a short break and then you come and just answer that question and then we let you go. We have Suleiman Shahbal. He's a businessman. He's a politician. He's a philanthropist and writer. And he's here. He's been talking to us about the politics of Mombasa and the coast region. And of course, now he's answering the question about the Lamu coal power plant. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock. Let's take a look at traffic and then we continue the conversation shortly.
spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Traffic.
All right, it seems the seatbelt brigade is out this morning and asking people flying whatever route, whether it is and whether you're in your private vehicle or public transport, that you should actually have your seatbelts on, and that is causing some traffic in different spots in the city. Thika Road, right around Muthaiga, that operation is also taking place. Mombasa Road, hoping that what we see as a gridlock will open up as soon as possible, getting to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout and using other, roads, getting off of Bagathi Way and then joining with Langata Way as well. Before we get to the City Mortuary roundabout, it's slow, but it's moving. The Eastern Bypass at Utawala, the question is, when will there not be traffic? Because that is moving bumper to bumper, absolutely so slowly. We're not sure when. Okay, there's also jam from, yes, we saw that already coming into town. And that's what it looks like this morning, where there were light showers earlier and then saying that, typical morning express. Let's see what it looks like in a short while.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
2 minutes past 8 o'clock. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation on 102.5 Kisumu, 87.9 Mombasa, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, and 97.7 in Malindi. Remember, we live stream. Did I say remember?
You did, but it's okay.
Remember, we live stream
It's
the
fine.
show. We live stream the show. I've actually done live stream the show on
Thank you.
Spice FM KE Facebook, and also we are on our website www.spicefm.co.ke, YouTube Spice FM KE, and on Twitter at Spice FM KE. We have been having in the studio Suleiman Shabal, businessman and politician, who was answering the question about the Lamu coal plant and the rough waters that it faced.
The Paris Accord, which sets the guidelines for climate change and all that, clearly recognized the need for developing countries to make some compromises, okay, and we all accept that every country wants to go green, but you need a base load to develop your economy. Our biggest priority today is the creation of jobs. Mm-hmm. That's our number one priority, our number two priority, our number three priority. Without cheap power, it won't happen. Coal is probably the cheapest way to produce power. Now, Dubai is building a similar coal plant 3.5 times bigger than ours. Okay? You guys have been to Dubai. I don't think there's any country more environmentally sensitive than Dubai. Okay? Mm. And they have all the sun in the world and all the gas in the world, but they still chose to go coal because it's economically the cheapest way to go. Turkey is building an equally large plant. Mm-hmm. And Turkey is a country that relies heavily on tourism as well. So for us to go and build something like that was an economic necessity. Already 90% of Kenya's power is green today.
Yeah.
So the world can forgive us for being a little accommodating today.
Right.
And the technology of today is not the technology of 30 years ago. Mm. But what you're seeing here is the noisy minority winning the fight. And I think the government needs to take
decisive action.
Some decisive action. Because these guys, the environmental lobby, is holding every project in this country hostage.
When this matter went to the
tribunal, they tried
tribunal.
LAPSAT and they held it hostage for a long time. Okay. the wind farms in Kinangop were held hostage. And they went and told the Maasai, "Oh, your cows are going to stop giving birth, and your women will be, and your men will become infertile, and all that." And see what's happened to that multi-billion shilling project. By the way, that's a wind project. I thought, you got to decide. Wind is green.
It can't get greener, can
It
it?
can't get greener.
When you're in environmental...
They held SGR hostage. My friend, everybody wants to save trees, but if you're going to build houses, sometimes you'll have to
You're
cut
going to
down a
need
few
a tree or
trees.
two, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a compromise we as a country have to make if we're going to create jobs and to industrialize.
The outcome of the tribunal, when this matter went to the tribunal,
Yes.
You were ordered to go back and conduct fresh public participation.
Yes.
Is it something that you're willing to do, going back to the people and having a fresh conversation with the people?
We were really surprised by that when they said, "Oh, public participation, adequate." That's the word, adequate public participation.
Yes.
Okay. We have had meetings with all political leaders, with all religious leaders, with all community leaders, with the farmers, with the fishermen. Minister of Energy went literally door to door, sensitizing people. The environmental lobby that went to court saying that they were not sensitized enough were in every single meeting that was ever held. There were, more than 40 meetings held. Now, Lamu is a small town. It's
And
not...
they're well documented.
Every single one of them is documented. They attended every single meeting. So we could not understand where the ruling was, where it was coming from. And they say that, you should accept the ruling of the court. But I think this tribunal was absurd. Okay, I'm not mincing words about it. It was totally absurd.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, there's a guy who came and said that 1,500 people are going to die because of this coal plant. Nobody asked him, where did you come with that figure from? Where is the scientific basis?
backing,
It was let to slide.
Is it 1,500 or is it 150 or is it 150,000? Okay, no logic. And then he's asked, what is your credentials? He says, my credential in 1985, I supervised the environmental survey of my friend 1975. Can you imagine the Toyota Corolla of 1985? Okay, just simple cars of 30, 40 years ago. You're using that as a benchmark for current analysis today. So that whole tribunal just treated this thing a bit flippantly. Okay, and when you just dismiss a major project like this so flippantly, it sends a very powerful message to other
investors,
large investors, that you could spend hundreds of millions of dollars, and then some tribunal over there could just wake up one morning and come up with a very flippant judgment and stop you in your tracks.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're still in court with them. And it's not a decision that we're going to take lying down. We have to look for alternative solutions.
You'll push all the way.
Kenya needs power.
And this was going to be a mega power project.
This was going to be a mega power plant. If we don't have power, forget about this industrialization, forget about job creation.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
As we come to the end of the show, let me just check in some of the questions. This one, I'll combine all of them, and actually these three questions are asking the same thing. About the reliance of Mombasa County and the coastal region on tourism. Are you over-reliant on tourism? And of course, it's also asking about the blue economy.
Tourism is the county, the coast economy is not totally reliant on tourism. I think tourism contributes about 22 to 24% of the GDP of Mombasa. So it's not an overly heavy reliance on tourism. It's important, but it's not really...
It's not the main.
It's not the main thing for the Mombasa economy. Neither is it for Kwale or for Kilifi County. What was the second question you asked?
It's about the blue economy, how to harness the blue economy.
Yes, the blue economy is a huge opportunity. But right now, like we said, it's an idea. Okay, we need to invest in hundreds of boats that have to be given or sold or leased. Somehow we need to get these boys fishing. Okay, but it's not just fishing. Fishing is only one part of the cycle. You need to have proper training for how they go fishing. You need to give them with the boats, the equipment, the nets, and then you need to create the purchasing mechanism, because there's no point somebody going out to fish coming back with 200-300 kilos, and then they are rotting on the seafront. Okay, so the fishing cooperatives. Then we need to look at the commercial fishing, buying, a couple of, at a bare minimum 100 trawlers that go out. Now 100 trawlers, roughly, you're talking about $200,000 per trawler. That's 20 million. So you're looking at an investment of between 5 to 10 billion shillings to make the blue economy a reality. Right now, we're just talking. Okay, I go on the ground and I want to see where the boats that are going to go on fishing and catch this fish. Akuna.
So it's too much talk.
It's too much talk.
Too much talk, too much planning. Well, did you participate in the Jumuiya Counties of Pwani conference that was happening late last year?
No.
Why? You were not invited or you were not interested?
They've had a couple of meetings before. There's too much talk and no action.
And no action.
Yeah.
It seems to be the
So it's largely academic and political feel-good meetings. And there are better places to feel good
producing
than to listen
documents.
to a bunch of
listening to a bunch of PR,
Before we
essentially.
end, I'm going back to this discussion on coal because much as coal has been maligned, the benefits that coal and its byproducts actually have are profound and they're numerous. And this is something that people don't seem to want to discuss. What will you do? Because it is true and as it is certain that if we actually begin coal production, very many problems that Kenyans seem to have will more or less literally vanish.
It's like people on the river fishing. And there's a guy upstream and he has 10 lines in the river fishing. And then you are coming down here, half a kilometer down the river, and you've got your one line. And the guys up there with 10 lines are telling you, Apana,
In fact, with the net.
you're messing up the waters. Stop fishing. Okay. But the reality is the first world hasn't stopped coal production, hasn't
No, they
stopped.
haven't.
No, they haven't.
Okay. In Germany, it's the backbone of the power supply. Okay. In most of Europe,
China, America.
India, South America, South Africa, every major economy depends on a basic supply. Technology has changed dramatically. I went to China and I looked at a power plant that had 1,000 megawatts here and then a second power plant of another 1,000 megawatts. And they had a board up there which was measuring the emissions coming out. This new power plant, which was probably 2 years after the first one, the improvement in emissions control was dramatic. Really, really, really dramatic. And they're telling me the new generation is even more efficient and cleaner. Okay? So the problem with coal historically has been the emissions that are coming out, the sulfur and the nitrates that come out that create acid rain. All those are now captured. Our plant the performance of our power plant was even better than World Bank standards. Nobody bothered to look at that. Okay.
And yet you presented it even to the tribunal.
Yes, we did. And it's not like there are people who don't understand. We could not understand. There was very little logical basis other than public participation for the tribunal's ruling. So we've never understood that. And some of my good friend, the former Chief Justice, Willie Mutunga, also opposed the coal plant. And then I said to him, Willie, you owe it to yourself as an intellectual to have sat down and truly listened to the other side before jumping a position. But this, unfortunately, is we're all driven by media. Media is now very much climate control, climate change. Yes, it's a serious concern, but we also need to look at both sides and take a realistic and informed and educated position on this thing.
Even as we are down to end on one note, there's one attribute about coal that I don't understand why it isn't advertised. It's its capacity to be used with other renewable sources of energy. It has that capacity.
And yet
And yet,
It's not being used, unfortunately.
and yet,
It appears the fighters have carried the day in terms of, dissemination of
so
information.
they think.
Dissemination of information.
So they think. So they think.
Yeah, as Suleiman, you're saying, if people actually take time to go and understand what exactly is this about coal and what's the development of coal around the world, whether the world is actually moving away from coal or going by improving technologies so they can ensure that they're using coal but cleaner. This is the route that the world is taking. I want to thank you very much for coming this morning, Suleiman.
Pleasure.
Asante
Thank you.
sana. We will invite you again, of course, to talk about other matters of development and national politics. We deliberately steered clear of asking you whether you belong to, now that you were in Jubilee in the last election, whether you're still in Jubilee, whether you're in Tangatanga or Kieleweke. Don't answer that question. We'll
think about it as
think about it.
It's an academic question.
As an academic question.
Ponder.
We'll ask you that as we go on. And then, of course, we'll also ask you about what you think about BBI. Those are conversations that are going to happen. We know that you write every so often on the Standard. And we'll invite you, of course.
Every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday.
Yes.
Every Tuesday. Today is Tuesday. So his article is on the
but
Standard.
I think they missed my column this week.
They didn't get it.
I'm
So I'm seeing
looking
Odoro
for
when.
Andrew Kipkemboi to ask him what happened.
What happened?
going on?
Yes.
When you step out of here, pass by Andrew's office. Thank you very much for joining us. That was Suleiman Shahbal. He's a businessman, he's a politician, he's a man who's vied twice to be the governor of Mombasa. He has just fallen short of telling us that he wants to vie again. He's saying that when the people, this time he wants it to be the other way around. Not him telling the people, but the other way around from the people. But he has a lot of ideas on how the coastal region should be developed. You have talked and talked and talked until you've gone hoarse about the Dongo Kundu Special Economic Zone. We hope to see some progress on this Special Economic Zone. Asante sana.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Very stimulating conversation.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Asante.
Asante.
It's 16 minutes past 8 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
96.1 Spice FM. Kisi.
Everything nice. Alright, okay. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. 96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Very well spoken gentleman, right?
Oh, yes, clear.
And articulate and has ideas, of course, on how the coast region should be developed. We'll wait to see what the people of Mombasa do and say about him in coming days. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Thank you very much for joining us at 19 minutes past 8. Of course, we are live streaming the show, as I keep reminding you, on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on Twitter, on YouTube, on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. Remember, you can join the conversations as we go along on 0719 012 600. But now let's switch gears a little bit. In the room this morning, my name is Eric Latif. We have CT Muga and Nduoko.
Right, talk about shifting gears and looking at what is happening regionally. And of course, we know that on December 10th, 2019, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And of course, this was in direct relation with what he has done concerning the official end of the Ethiopia-Eritrea border conflict, which has been in contention for the last 20 years. Of course, we see that war ended the actual war, when we're talking about engaging, ended, or the conflict ended in the year 2000. But there have been frosty relations between the two countries for the last 18 years, and that came to a head in 2019 with certain peace treaties having been drawn out. And the real struggle for this liberation, the real struggle for this freedom, the real struggle for this peace was really fought by Ethiopia's prime minister. And of course, then the accolades that were then awarded him included the Nobel Peace, or the Nobel Prize for Peace. Now, recently we heard President Trump say, President, of course, of the United States, say that, okay, hold on, I also stopped a war. I stopped a war in several countries. How come I was not awarded the Peace Prize? And he said this quite glaringly.
Who said this?
President Trump.
Peace Prize.
Right. So he said, if this is if these are the requirements that are being met, I too then deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. I too then deserve even much more, because what I have done and the impact that has been felt by Americans alone requires a lot in terms of awards or in terms of recognition. Now, it's very clear in this case that the Nobel Peace Prize is not some kind of roadside declaration. It's not a bunch of people sitting together and saying, oh, okay, let's pick a couple of people and hand out this award. They actually take time to notice and regard what people have done over time and said, because of this, we're going to award you, because of the impact of what it is that you have struggled and sweated and bled to do, the impact that it would then have over your region and in turn over the rest of the world. Now, if you look at the individuals that have received this award over time, they've made an effort, and a huge effort, glaringly so, to make sure that certain things come to light. Now, if you look at what happened in Eritrea, Ethiopia, 300,000 people died, people displaced, two countries basically thrown into icy relations for a very, very long period of time. You could say single-handedly, but here we have a prime minister who made sure that his efforts came to light. And I'm saying that American imperialism is an antithesis to the ideals of the Nobel Peace Prize.
Say that again. American imperialism is an antithesis to the Nobel Peace Prize.
To the ideals.
To the ideals
of the Nobel Peace Prize. It would be interesting to hear what it is that Abiy Ahmed had to say when he was actually receiving this prize in December last year. And he talked about the fact that, these are the things that we went through. It wasn't just, I didn't sit behind a desk somewhere and say, please talk to each other. Let's have peace. Get out of Eritrea. Get out of Ethiopia.
They took the initiative.
I actually was in the trenches, and I understand what we're talking about when we're talking about conflict. So for President Trump to open his mouth and say, really, I stopped a war too, doesn't really understand what conflict is, doesn't understand what peace and the lack thereof really means for countries. And so when we look at what this man has been able to do in the light of what actually happened during this Eritrea-Ethiopia conflict, border conflict, this is not something that you can just open your mouth and say that, like I said before, it's something that we just pass out. Anybody wants one here, throw one in the crowd and see who can receive by virtue of that fact.
I am honored to be here with you today and grateful to the Norwegian Nobel Committee for recognizing and encouraging my contribution to a peaceful resolution of the border dispute between Ethiopia and Eritrea. I accept this award on behalf of Ethiopians and Eritreans, especially those who made the ultimate sacrifice in the cause of peace. Likewise, I accept this award on behalf of my partner and comrade in peace, President Isaias Afwerki, whose goodwill, trust, and commitment were vital in ending the two-decade deadlock between our countries. I also accept this award on behalf of Africans and citizens of the world for whom the dream of peace has often turned into a nightmare of war.
He was very clear about this in this case, what he was saying. We're not talking about, two little children fighting, countries in a deadlock.
Millions of people.
Yeah. Millions of people displaced, 300,000 people having lost their lives over time. And for one man over time, he's not been the first prime minister. There've been prime ministers before him, but he's the one who was able to make a contribution so strong. He was the one who was able to make a contribution so influential that people were actually now able to down their weapons and say, you know what, let us actually live in peace because of his contribution. And it's something that has been widely recognized. And this is not just somebody who sat suit and tie in an armchair in an office. This is somebody who actually was a soldier. He understood what it meant to be in conflict and said, we cannot have this anymore. For a united country, for a united region, for a united continent, these are some of the things I'm going to insist on. And then it seems to all be watered down when President Trump comes along and says,
Trump
I
may not
need one as
necessarily be
well.
the one who's watering it down. I'm looking at the Nobel Peace Committee, and it seems to have taken some sort of some political angle to it as well, in terms of, so for instance, now this time they gave it to Abiy Ahmed, and he's even accepting it on behalf of his brother and comrade Isaias Afewerki. So Afewerki was not given because he has more wars going on.
No, because
if you're talking about the end of a conflict between two countries, then it's two
Ahmed
countries.
took the initiative and said, look, tooth and nail, I am going to fight for this.
And you think
I am
Afewerki
going
did
to-
not take initiative?
No, actually, he
Is that
didn't.
what the Nobel Committee is telling us?
No, even,
didn't
interestingly
force
enough,
it on him.
interestingly enough, without the recognition of the Nobel Committee, it was clear the work that Ahmed was doing in terms of resolving this conflict. You didn't need the Nobel Committee to highlight it. What has happened?
agree.
What
In
has
terms of
happened
what-
is that it has
what-
been highlighted so more people know about actually what he did. But it doesn't mean that he was not working. He actually worked. What they did was recognize all the work that he was actually doing, all the things that he actually did. All the
Granted,
he actually took the initiative.
Granted, yes, he took the initiative. Yes, Dr. Ahmed took the initiative, and he went ahead to approach the other side. Now, one of the reasons why this was not a protracted issue of a back and forth is because he found a side that's willing to listen. A side that also took the initiative and said, yes, you're coming. Yes, let's actually have a conversation. And yes, what do we need to work on?
And because
Isaias
of that,
Afewerki also worked to bring this peace that we're talking about.
after
And the
the
Nobel
hand,
Committee-
after the hand was brought to him,
Yes, but he accepted the hand.
He accepted it, but this is what
He
we're
had a
saying.
role
He
to
didn't
play in
take
this.
yes, of course he had a role to play, but he didn't take the initiative and fight for it the way in which Ahmed did, and that is
do we know
widely
he did not take
recognized. He
initiative?
didn't.
The point which is being made here, for instance, I've been planting trees for the longest time, but it's Wangari Maathai who got that particular prize for her efforts, isn't it?
True.
There's a point at which someone's efforts become a little more significant
Than the other parties.
than the other players. Yes, I think this is the debate. So I would ask, Andu, what is this significant thing that this particular gentleman did that the others didn't?
Well, here we are. They allowed this conflict to simmer for 20 years. Okay, we're taking control. 2 years later, we invade. Another 2 years later, we push you out and we invade and we sit pretty for some time. After some time, he said, you know what? Come on, guys, this is ridiculous. Fine. We had the mass casualties that we had kind of ended in the year 2000. But then after that, the frosty relations continued. Border countries who could have done so much more together as opposed to sitting in isolation, sharing a border where people are crossing, doing all kinds of
even
trade.
more interesting here.
So what he did when you're asking that question is what significance did he do? He
What?
was the bigger man. And that is significant in this sense.
Bigger how?
That he offered the hand and said, look, what can we do to solve this thing?
It's true, Ndu.
No one before had
the-
done it.
the
Zenawi
aggressor-
didn't
The
do it.
aggressor in this conflict has always been, to a large extent, Ethiopia, right? So Ethiopia has actually been the one that has been aggressing.
Interestingly
Ethiopia-
enough, Eritrea actually invaded Ethiopia first.
All right,
if you want
but
to look
then-
at the history of this,
Okay.
they are the ones who actually invaded
They're
the
the ones who
territory
started the
that was
issues.
now Bedma.
and then they were pushed back.
Yes, they were pushed back.
And Ethiopia came and even occupied some of their territory for the longest time. So here is two warring parties. Two warring parties make peace, but then only one is recognized.
Yes,
And
because
that's why I'm
they
saying
would
the
have
Nobel
continued.
Committee starts to play politics, and
It
that's why you see
cannot-
it's not just Donald
It
Trump who's
cannot,
actually
no, it
bringing
cannot
issues
be
down.
ignored. It
It's the
cannot be
committee
ignored
itself.
that unless Ahmed went out in the way and manner in which he did, that frosty relation would have still been in place. Nobody stretched out a
De
hand.
Klerk and
Mandela.
both got that Peace Prize.
Yes,
Martin Luther King, who did he get it with?
alone.
Precisely. Was he the only person who was advocating for peace? Why didn't they throw in Malcolm X? Eldridge Cleaver. there's something strange about these committees. There are 5 of them. Alfred Nobel didn't seem to have explained this, but what is clear is that there are 5 committees. 4 of them are in Sweden. The 5th one is in Norway, and that committee is decided on, or the committee, the people who comprise the committee are decided by their parliament. Now, why it was decided this way, no one knows. Why it is they choose the way they do is not really entirely clear. Just like Alfred Nobel's idea to have one committee being determined by Norwegians is also not clear. As far, from where I'm sitting, it's not clear.
It's not clear.
No, it isn't clear, because if you look at the players of the examples I've just given, when people were looking for equal rights in America, man, they were big players. Martin Luther King stood out, but he was one of the big players. And even among his peers who were black, there were other people.
Oh, for sure.
Yes. So, but you could argue he stood out.
He stood out. He was at
And
the
why?
forefront.
His message was peace.
His message was peace, and I think that's one of the overriding elements, or one of the overriding things that they look at when they're looking at this. In terms of, it could be who is the one who is actually not afraid to be in the forefront.
De Klerk and Mandela, one could argue, without De Klerk saying, look, we need to move this way.
Mandela would not have shown in the way in which he did.
Well, he did. You can see how both of them played.
They
seemed to
played
play almost an equal part. One can see it. But where
One
Eric is
approaches
right,
and the other one reciprocates.
where Eric
No,
is
in
right.
this case, de Klerk actually said, look, we've got to do this thing. And it happened to be that he pushed Mandela forward to say, look, you be then at the forefront. Okay? And that was very clear. In this sense, when we're looking at what happened then between Eritrea and Ethiopia, it was one side that was very clear and said time and time again, we cannot continue like this. What
This business,
can we do?
there's something I'm saying I don't agree with. De Klerk didn't push Mandela forward. Not really. If pushing forward means he made a good political decision, then I would say yes.
He did.
Remember, the pressure wasn't only in South Africa.
It was around the world to
And
stop
the
this thing.
pressure was mounting.
Yep.
It wasn't lessening.
And the pressure was on Mandela to be released and for changes to happen. This apartheid thing has got to end somehow. We've got to find an end to this. And of course, the leading light in the apartheid, of course, just like you're saying in the case of Martin Luther, there were many other leaders who were fighting the apartheid, but Nelson Mandela was at the forefront.
None of them had been in prison for 27 years.
Yeah.
Well,
for
of
as long
course not.
as,
But many
right?
would even argue that the person who actually led this fight for the liberation was Winnie Mandela, and she did this. Even
One
in the
would
fact,
argue differently, because if you talk about Winnie, you are leaving people like Oliver Tambo out of the
exactly.
discussion.
This is what I'm saying. Some
Yes.
people would argue that one of the people was Winnie Mandela. That's what I said. It would be very clear that there were very many other people who fought for this. But in terms of who the face was,
Face was
That's what it
Nelson,
was.
right?
Yeah.
And then the other side, on the government side, the face was Frederick de Klerk. Sawa. So in the case of
they had to have
Ethiopia
a
and
united
Eritrea,
front. They had to have a united front. But in this case, who actually started all of this?
who started all of it?
No.
Who signed that deal in 2000? Abiy Ahmed was not in office.
Of course not.
Afewerki was.
But this is what we're
So
saying.
if
The
Afewerki
deal
had
was-
already agreed to a deal 10 years ago,
the conflicts, the active conflict ended. The tensions did not cease. Tensions ceased in 2018.
tensions did not cease because the leadership of Ethiopia was not willing to let the tensions
No,
cease.
it was
27
not
minutes
one
to 9
side
o'clock.
only. Unfortunately, you can't make that. It can't.
Let's take
It
a
was
look at
not one
traffic and
side.
then come back and look at and continue the conversation. Good morning. It's 27 to 9.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. Traffic.
So the traffic that we've seen looking for the last 3 days is actually human traffic. Nobody is driving anywhere. It's borders and individuals walking, and we're going to see that continuing for the next couple of days, probably for some time until the roads are actually repaired. From Garden City Mall to Muthaiga is moving very, very slowly this morning. Mombasa Road, we still don't know what the problem was, but today traffic of epic proportions and is moving extremely slowly inbound the city centre. All right, the Eastern Bypass has become 3 lanes heading to Mombasa Road and is now joining what we already see as crazy traffic there as well. Nothing major happening along Gong Road or Langata Road this morning. And Wayaki Way is also behaving. It's quite good. But where we see the problem, approach with caution and be patient. You'll get out as soon as we can. Traffic situation on Gong Road is also not so good. We see all the feeder roads to Mombasa Road having a rather Thika Road having a problem this morning. Let's see how that pans out in a short while. Anything that you need us to know about, or if you find an alternate route, Spice FM KE on Twitter, or give us a call on 0719 012 600.
96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
I believe that peace is an affair of the heart. Peace is a labor of love. Sustaining peace is hard work, yet we must cherish and nurture it. It takes a few to make war, but it takes a village and a nation to build peace. For me, nurturing peace is like planting and growing trees. Just like trees need water and good soil to grow, peace requires unwavering commitment, infinite patience, and goodwill to cultivate and harvest its dividends. Peace requires good faith to blossom into prosperity, security, and opportunity. In the same manner, trees absorb carbon dioxide to give us life and oxygen. Peace has a capacity to absorb the suspicion and doubt that may cloud our relationship. In return, it gives back hope for the future, confidence in ourselves, and faith in humanity.
Well, here we had essentially what turned from conflict to more than a diplomatic spat, and there were frosty diplomatic relations for at least 18 years. But at the result of this, what was then known as the summit that ended all of this in July 2018 is that Eritrea gave up all its claims on Ethiopia. Ethiopia gave up all its claims on Eritrea. Diplomatic relations were established, and Ethiopia gave back Badme to Eritrea. As a result of these negotiations, this is what happened. What was in contention for the last 20 years then finally was given up, and then everybody essentially was happy. Literally. That's what we have now. A situation of peace where nobody's fighting, there's no conflict, there's nothing. And I go back to say that unless we saw the outstretched hand of the leader of Ethiopia saying we cannot continue in this manner, the kind of conflicts that we've seen, the kind of bloodshed that we've experienced cannot continue anymore. And to say that whatever we need to do, we will do. It's not often that we see territories being handed back. Even today, after colonialism has ended, in quotes, it's not easy for former colonialists to say, here, this territory that we took from you here, have it back.
We've seen it happen in the Golan Heights.
Sure, it's happened, but it's not easy. It's not an easy process for people to get there. And to say that here we're going to outstretch this hand, these guys were bitter rivals. We had leaders upon leaders upon leaders who absolutely said, no, we're not even going to have the conversation. We're not going to have the discussion. Any discussion that we're going to have is armed conflict, nothing else. But here we had somebody, and it was significantly clear that his approach, or that his the way in which he was going to go about this was peace. It was peace from the beginning, until 2019.
Eric Hakil has a very valid point. And I'm going to give you an example to support why I'm saying this. In 1999, this committee confirmed that Mahatma Gandhi had been nominated unsuccessfully for that prize 5 times.
Mahatma Gandhi.
Yes, now you can see where I'm going with this discussion. 5 times.
5 times nominated.
Never got it. And in 2006, the secretary of the Norwegian Nobel Committee said this was the greatest omission. He's quoting, the greatest omission in our 106-year history. So
they said they made a mistake.
Yes, they did.
5 times.
They made a mistake 5 times, yeah.
Yes. I'm not attacking you. You're going on the defensive, and I haven't even built my discussion yet.
Yeah, they said they made a mistake.
Yes, I'm building it. I'm simply saying, look at what Mahatma Gandhi did. Compare other people who've received this Peace Prize and tell me how they would compare
to Mahatma.
Yes, tell me. They'd fall short.
So what we're saying in this, in
we're not taking away from the fact that
I'm saying in
Dr.
recent
Abiy Ahmed
expression,
Ali
we're not-
deserves it.
No, that was not whether he deserves it or not. I am saying in recent expressions by President Trump, because this is what now brought up all of this. This is where it now came belly up. And he said, look, because he stopped a war, I too have stopped
many
wars.
wars.
So why don't
And
I?
how many more has he created?
And why don't I then get this peace prize? You know, and so of course the response to that
He was
that
probably
came from
speaking tongue in
Ahmed,
cheek, but it raises a the issue that I've taken out of what Trump was saying is looking at how this committee picks its nominees and picks its winners. And I'm looking at it and thinking, all right, so how actually do you balance it? And I see some level of politics in this. When Obama came, everybody in the world was talking about Obama. Obama has not started or stopped any war. He's just made a promise that he's going to withdraw troops from Afghanistan and Iraq. He gets the peace prize. Aung San Suu Kyi, because she's been fighting a military junta in Myanmar, gets the peace prize. What do we see now with the Rohingya people in Myanmar?
She's doing the very things
Have
that
they,
she seems to have
have they
fought for.
said? Have they said that no,
No,
you
we're
don't
withdrawing
deserve
that
this, we're
peace prize.
withdrawing it? No, they still. It's because of political and looking at it regionally. So the last time we gave an African, let's look at an African. Let's look at this is a kind of politics. This committee has now been overtaken by politics. It's no longer about the issue of looking at true global
I
world
wouldn't put it
peace.
that strongly.
Well,
There's some
maybe
there's some
that's
time. So
pushing
they
it a little bit.
I wouldn't put it that strongly because
I
it's
am.
not as though it's one committee for a century. They change from time
Individuals
to time.
change
And
over
remember,
time.
I'm saying
the
current generation
the Norwegian parliament decides who is
Dominates.
on that. No. Actually,
decides.
they decide
Picks.
who is. They have their criteria. But if you look at the committee, they're people of very serious renown. I mean, they're not. They're people who have achievements behind them. So you can't just dismiss them and say these people.
They've got political influence.
It's interesting to note that on the what has been actually documented is that the same committee never lets these requirements to be known to the public. It's something of secret, and they said it will never be
Closely
known.
guarded.
It's closely guarded.
This
They
is
never
what
know. You never know
their criteria.
what criteria they use to make this selection. Now, I mean, if we hear what CT is saying now, that these are guys who are the full bob. They know what it is that they are doing. They're not just sitting around saying, "Let's just choose
yes, people
whoever."
who know what they're doing doesn't necessarily mean that they are clean, right? So because they've been picked by some politicians in some parliament somewhere, remember, they are political appointees directly.
No, the
They have
members of parliament.
They have
who-
been picked by MPs.
No,
So-
it is
and
it is
MPs
passed
are
by
politicians.
yes, but
And
members of parliament make the selection who are elected.
Yes, these MPs are politicians, and if you look at maybe what is the thinking behind these politicians, what are they thinking about? They're thinking about, well, we need to keep this thing relevant. We need to make sure that we expand our influence of this Nobel Committee and the Nobel Peace Prize. It needs to look global. It needs to retain its place because we have this responsibility, and that's why I'm saying they balance it out. For instance, I'm still asking that question because that's the question I asked immediately. I had Dr. Abiy Ahmed Ali of Ethiopia has been given the Nobel Peace Prize. I said, wow, very good because of the peace process with Eritrea. And I thought, wait, does Eritrea not have a leader? Did he sign this peace deal by himself? There was a leader on the other side. Are we saying that Isaias Afewerki is less deserving because he's one who was involved in the conflict in the first place? He brought back the peace. He signed that deal in 2000. He was involved in it. He was involved in even sitting down. Yes, we can say the Ethiopian leadership extended the hand, but he took the hand.
There were
He
no
chose to
diplomatic.
took the
There were
hand.
no diplomatic relations whatsoever.
But
Afewerki
Afewerki chose to accept the hand.
Exactly after it was extended to him.
Yes.
he didn't take the
He
first
could
step.
have chosen not to. And even the first time, he's
Exactly,
the one
that's
who
the
has,
thing. And if he
has
chose not
signed-
to, then obviously he wasn't a proponent of peace at that point. And that's
but
what
he
we are
did.
saying.
But he
it
chose
was
to.
extended. Exactly,
He
because
chose
it was
to.
extended to him. He didn't take the initiative at that point, and that's what it was seen in relations that was so frosty.
Are you saying because of that he's not deserving of it?
I didn't say that. You did. But
I'm
I'm
asking.
saying that the hand was extended to him and he took it. He never took the initiative at that point. Whatever reason he had is not what is in contention here. But somebody was the bigger person and they extended their hand and they said, look, we can't continue like this, my brother. How are we going to get through this? And he said, okay, fine, let's sit down. But somebody took the initiative, and that, I think, amongst other things, is what is being recognized here.
You know, we actually have two individuals who are on record as having declined these prizes.
Yeah, there are actually.
In 1937, a gentleman by the It's written Jean Paul, but I'm sure it's pronounced Jean Paul, something of that sort.
Right.
Okay? Sartre. I'm sure that's also pronounced differently. But 1964, he declined. He said he had consistently declined any official honors. Now, in 1973, something even more interesting happened. A gentleman by the name of Henry Kissinger, who was then the Secretary of State for the U.S., and Lee Duc Tho. Remember, America had been involved in issues in Vietnam and Cambodia, and the guy said he was not taking that thing. So, where there are human beings, there will be human issues coming into it.
Yeah.
And Eric has a valid point, because there are things that actually beg to be questioned, and there are things that beg to, well, they require answers. Because you find anomalies. If there are two people in this case, clearly there were two people. Two. Why are you only giving one person? It isn't a question of the bigger one. So if you go back to places where people have actually received these joint nominations, how do you decide who was the bigger and who was the lesser? And at what point do you decide they were equal?
Yeah.
And then at what point do you decide, given there were other players, at what point do you decide so-and-so is more important? Usually
Also the optics of it.
Yes, the optics of it. So usually...
What message are you sending to the people of Eritrea? Because now the person who's the leader of the people of Ethiopia has come in and taken the gift and
The honors.
the honors and said, yes, I accept it. What are you saying to the people of Eritrea?
That they didn't play an important part.
That the people who died in Eritrea don't
That
matter?
their role was not significant.
That their role was not significant? What are you saying in this? That is the question. That's why I'm saying this thing, sometimes they play politics with this Nobel Peace Prize. And when Donald Trump, tongue-in-cheek, I believe he was basically just joking when he said, what has this guy done? I've also done equally. I've stopped wars in many countries.
Well, I think there were many other underlying issues when Donald Trump said that. In a country somewhere in Africa, he said somewhere in that country where we don't even know what his name is. Of course, he was pointing to the fact that, the continent that he has referred to in other very interesting terms previously, or the continent, what good can come out of Africa, really? And here you are saying that somebody has stopped war. Goodness, so have I. So why recognize him and not me? My goodness, the leader of the free world. So I think there are very many other connotations that came with the expression from Donald Trump.
Some doctor, now you're giving it to some prime minister. You guys.
By the way, statistics tell us that, talk about the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, 64 individuals have received it personally, individually, no competition. 30 have shared. 2 people sharing one. And lo and behold, there's a time 3 people have shared on 2 occasions. Now, this even muddies this water further. If you've had occasions where there are 3 people, what was so difficult about putting in the Eritrean president?
Yeah, we'll never know, because it's a secret formula. At this point, we don't know how their requirements come to play. But obviously, there's a reason why this has come through. And
is it rusing? Over time, rusing. Is it losing its relevance?
Today, there's a problem.
There's a problem somewhere.
It isn't a problem. It isn't a problem.
It's inherent. It's just
no. It isn't even inherent.
Coming to my true element.
No, the mother tongue is claiming its true position. Upende uspende.
Take it, brother.
Yes, red lorry, yellow lorry.
Is this Nobel Peace Prize losing its international relevance and importance?
Eric, let me sound a little flippant. I'm going to sound a little flippant here. What this reminds me of is these Academy Awards.
Oh, like the Oscars, yes.
Yes, because there are times you say, deserves, Others you wonder, hey, this is the list, the checklist for these things, but okay, so how? Again, you'd be told, that's what you think. The committee that decides thinks differently.
They think differently. And they look at very many other factors that you're not seeing.
Yes, and it's been argued over time that there are factors that are considered which override others, like politically correct. An African has not won this.
So let's give it to
an Asian has not won this. Yes.
Let's give this.
Yes. Remember, that entire industry is a business. It's not a charity. So you are going to look at the dynamics. It's like these pop groups that keep coming up. How about time we had a young group of mixed this? A group comes up. Usually those groups don't last very long. Now, why don't we have some sisters singing for us? Doesn't last very long, but they're given so much publicity. And then I asked the question, okay, this famous song that we can identify them by, then I'm at a loss. The point is, where there are human beings, there'll be cases of human frailty. So it's not that people are seeking to be bad. It's not that people are seeking to present a negative image. It's just that the human beings going about human business. Yes, and it'll be fraught with errors. And it'll be fraught with situations that are not easy to explain. It'll be fraught with questions that keep rising, question after question after question.
Yeah, I don't think, though, that the significance of the effort that was made on the part of Abiy Ahmed then should be watered down in any way, shape or form, because it's quite obvious that what he did in this region, especially also with escalating conflicts in the Horn of Africa, what he did cannot be ignored. The initiative that he took, the strides that he made definitely cannot be ignored. We look at something that lasted 20-odd years, even
yet,
after the end of the conflict.
Dr. John Garang and the leader of Sudan
Bashir.
Were never recognized. How long was their conflict?
50.
How many people? And they even agreed to carve out a country.
And,
they were never recognized.
And do we
Dr.
see?
John, were
do
they
we
even
see
nominated?
fantastic? Do we see now fantastic
No,
relations
the point
between
is
North
there's
and South?
the point is that there was a country. They
Why
signed
don't
a
we-
In
peace
this,
why
the
don't we
deal.
point,
answer her
but in
question?
this, the
Well,
point is
and
that
then tell her-
diplomatic relations were re-established between Eritrea and Ethiopia, something that did not happen for 20 years.
The same thing
that they
had
can
happened.
actually know that they
The
can
same
actually
thing
that they
happened
can
when they
actually
created a
sit
new
in a
country out
room
of Sudan.
that they can actually sit in a room and talk in manner that they never did for 20 years after the death of 300,000 people, after the reclaiming of a territory, re-established, not frosty, no conflict anymore, finished, over, complete.
And what happened when those guys were here? When those guys were at Nyayo Stadium in the presence of Colin Powell, when they were signing that peace deal, the two leaders of the Sudans, and the creation of a new country.
But now
and
in
establishment
Ethiopia
of
and
new relations.
Eritrea, diplomatic relations restored. Everything is okay.
And what do you think happened in Sudan?
So,
It's the same
and
thing.
has it remained that way?
Well, do we know whether
Has it
Ethiopia is
remained that
going to
way?
remain the same? We don't
Actually,
know.
we don't.
We don't
We
know.
don't know, but we're talking about now in the present.
It's
This is what
9
we
minutes.
see.
It's 9 minutes to 9 o'clock. I'll expect you to come and answer. You wanted to answer that question that she had asked. You know what happened between the two countries. It's 9 minutes to 9. We're discussing the Nobel Peace Prize. This is the situation with Kenya's biggest conversation.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Today, I stand here in front of you talking about peace because of faith. I crawled my way to peace through the dusty trenches of war years ago. I was a young soldier when war broke out between Ethiopia and Eritrea. I witnessed firsthand the ugliness of war in frontline battles. There are those who have never seen war but glorify and romanticize it. They have not seen the fear. They have not seen the fatigue. They have not seen the destruction or heartbreak, nor have they felt the mournful impotence of war after the carnage. War is the epitome of fail for all involved. I know because I have been there and back. I have seen brothers slaughtering brothers on the battlefield. I have seen older men, women, and children trembling in terror under the deadly shower of bullets and artillery shells. You see, I was not only a combatant in war, I was also a witness to its cruelty and what it can do to people. War makes for bitter men, heartless and savage men.
So I guess, of course, speaking to the fact that this is something that he experienced and then did not want to experience for himself or anybody else in the country anymore, and really understanding what it meant to get out of that situation and say, look, can we just all get along, as the popular adage says, you know? And I think this is one, I mean, just from what we know, because we never really know the formula that is used for this decision or this selection, but it stands out pretty glaringly that, you know, this is something that he understood and said, look, we don't want to go back there again.
You know, in 1947, it marked something very interesting in the subcontinent of what we now call Asia, India. What was British India were divided into, not two, started off with two, Pakistan, and now we call it India. They were not originally called that. One was actually called the Union of India, then the Dominion of Pakistan. Then later Bangladesh was hived off. 10 to 12 million people got displaced. I'm not talking about the deaths, just displaced. What is significant is that Gandhi had been fighting through peaceful means. One, independence first of all, and then he wanted this union to remain the same. Okay? He died for it. He was assassinated. Again, didn't get a peace prize. Now, you're talking about one of the most populous regions on the planet. So those decisions that were being made influenced that number of people, if you look at the demographics. I'm not belittling what has happened in Eritrea and Ethiopia. No, I am simply saying that the mistakes that human beings make, even in such wonderful and hallowed committees, cannot go unspoken of. We must state and say, and again, I'm quoting their own admission, they got it wrong. If they got it wrong previously, those people who are declaring that they got it wrong in 2006 are not the same people who are now in that committee. And it looks like they're getting it wrong again.
So that means that there's a puppet master somewhere
And
who's
they're
controlling
fermenting.
something.
Worse still, my point is they are actually fermenting further problems because the Eritreans will know that they were overlooked.
They'll think about it. They'll think about
They
it.
will know
that
they were
way.
overlooked.
And I look back
It's
and
clear.
I say, 30 years of war, just in our neighborhood here. Well, Ethiopia is also our neighbor, but in the Sudan, 30 years of war. People in the south were fighting for independence, and Omar al-Bashir and his people had refused. Yet it got to a point where they agreed, let's enter into peace talks. They took very many years of peace talks. Kalonzo Musyoka will tell you the back and forth that they were doing. They got to a point where they agreed, yes, we shall sign peace, and not just sign peace, but I will let go of this country that has oil. This part of my country that has oil, I will let go, and you guys can create your own country. Call it South Sudan. Here are two leaders who have gone through the trenches, who have fought one another, whose people have been killed. They have signed a peace deal. No talk about them, no mention about them by this Nobel Peace Committee. The Nobel Peace Prize isn't about peace anymore.
Maybe they should wait now, see if they'll call them in a couple of years. It doesn't mean that because you did it, they should call you immediately. Like
Well,
we said,
one
we
is
don't
in jail,
know
the other
we
one
don't-
died.
So
Those are many years ago.
No, but it's okay. It's possible that they actually award this prize to individuals.
Posthumously.
Yes, posthumously. It's possible. But what we are saying at this
How
point
many
is
have
that
been awarded?
we don't. And now we don't know.
No.
We don't know what the formula is, and it's
No,
very,
how
very
many have
clear.
been awarded? But you knew I was going to ask that question.
Yeah,
even
but I
if
don't
it
know
is
the
It was
answer. Maybe
coming.
you can tell
as
me.
soon
I
as
don't
you
know.
started saying it,
I don't know. Maybe you can tell me the answer, but I'm saying
No,
it's
why
possible
should
that
I?
could be
It's
done.
you who's making the
No, but you
statement.
talked about Gandhi and he was being assassinated. Why was he not called? You spoke about that, didn't you? You said that Gandhi was assassinated. Why was he not awarded the Peace
If I wanted
Prize?
to give Sudan as the example, wouldn't I have given it?
So, Eric gave it now. So I'm saying that you talked about Gandhi having been assassinated. Why was he not then awarded the prize? Obviously, he had passed away.
and for as
So
long as now they
it's
sit
possible
back,
that could have been
That
done.
man was nominated 5 times.
when he was still alive.
While he was
Alive,
still alive.
alive,
Exactly.
alive.
So it's possible that they could have recanted or rethought about their decision or non-decision at this point.
Because
we don't know.
he was
we don't
against the
know if they can.
imperialists.
And it's also
we don't
possible
know if they
Ndu,
can
that
award.
unicorns actually resided in North Africa.
Possible. We don't know if they could reward, if they could give this award posthumously. We don't know because this is not something that is made public.
They should
in
take
terms
away
of
the one that they've given to Aung San Suu Kyi and give it to somebody
Gandhi.
else. Because for as long as they allow, look, somebody that you've given this award, this honors because of bringing world peace. And then they're leader of a country. And
or
we're
peace in
seeing
their region. Yeah.
peace in their region. And you're seeing the kind of atrocities that are being meted out on people from the same region. An entire community actually being kicked out of an area. People who are dying, people who are seeking refuge in another country, and this person is still alive. In fact, this person is in a position of authority. She is not speaking out. She is a Nobel Peace Prize winner, laureate. Really? This is the point where we're saying this Nobel Committee should be sitting back and saying, let's review. What are you doing with the honor that we've bestowed upon you? Are you advancing world peace? Are you not? If you're not, take it back and announce publicly, just the same way you announce publicly that we give it to you.
I get what you're saying, and I see your passion, Eric. I understand it. At the same time, these are not people that were appointed by the world to give this award. They came together and they made this voluntary in terms of what they were doing and in terms of the monetary award that came along with it. And again, of course, the prerogative is theirs to keep the requirements a secret. So I mean, at the end of the day,
if they want
it is
this
something
thing,
that
if
is
they want
glaring
this
to
thing of
people.
theirs to remain relevant,
There's no way in
They
our
want
world,
this
even the
thing
people
of
who win
theirs to remain
Grammys
relevant.
and Oscars, like CT has talked about, there's always somebody who's going to say, no, actually, I think this piece was actually better than this, or I feel that this person made a more
Now
significant
here we have
contribution.
mentioned more than 3 instances
Yes,
this morning.
of course. You can
Just this
mention
morning.
10. You can mention 20.
Let's take a look
there
at
will
traffic
be
and then we come
incidences
back.
where somebody could make a better or bigger contribution.
Hii kitu haitaki makasiriko. Let's just look at traffic.
It's your passion that's showing, brother. Your passion is
Good
showing.
morning. It's 9 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Heading all the way to the CBD, we still have a terrible situation there. Traffic is not moving into the city in any way, shape, or form. Thika Road is busy from Survey. Stay safe is what we're asking you to do this morning, and of course, approach with caution as you get in or out of the city. Heavy traffic style up it seems to be the order of the day since yesterday. The Utawala bypass, there's traffic in and outbound. What used to be 2 lanes is now 3, 4, or 5 in some cases. Still a walking nation for the folks at Mwiki at Kasarani. Garden City Mall to Muthaiga is moving slowly. Of course, that's Thika Road. And of course, we have the mess that is Mombasa Road this morning, not giving up in any way, shape, or form right now. Let's see what that looks like in a short while. But for now, folks, I'm sorry, I don't have much good news. Let us know if you find an alternate route from sitting in traffic, and we'll spread the word. Spice FM KE or 0719012600.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's 2.5 minutes past 9 o'clock. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, we live stream the show on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on Twitter at Spice FM KE, and the hashtag is The Situation Room. We're also on www.spicefm.co.ke. Join the conversation.
Right, of course, I guess then, as we were discussing earlier, looking at the selection that is made by the Nobel Committee and saying, okay, well, certain things to be taken into consideration. And I think one thing that's clear is that, of course, there will be issues, whether you want to look at it one way or another, whether there were other people involved. And, of course, we don't know what requirements or what conditions are taken into consideration for the awarding, of some of these prizes or of the Peace Prize. And then to say that, let's have this committee looked at. If they're fueling, what did you say it was? Imperialism, if they're fueling other things, all right. Then, of course, also understanding that this is a voluntary action by primarily a country who said they're going to pick, a committee from around the world, essentially, and give up of what they think is
By
deserving.
the way, that isn't going to happen. This entire enterprise is funded by a fund that was set up by Alfred Nobel,
Yes.
a Swedish industrialist, and he had a will.
He had a lot of money, essentially.
Plenty. I mean, when you invent gunpowder, it's not a small thing. So here you have a situation where it is stated, and it's not going to change. That was what he wanted done, and it's going to continue being
That's how
done.
it will be done.
If somebody wants one way, you
Create your own.
let the UN create their own peace prize.
That's what I'm saying now. So if you feel that this one that they're doing, you don't like it, or you don't like the way in which they're selecting, go and do your own. If you have the funds that you can give people $1 million every time they do this, and that you can recognize them globally, go and create your own. If you feel that one individual then was given, this prize, and you feel that another individual also was deserving of the same, And
What
you have
they're-
the
what they're
wherewithal,
doing
and
is
you have the wherewithal to get it
No,
done.
the
by
problem
all
here-
we are
means.
opening up the scope for dialogue.
Yes.
Because we are recipients of all this information. And we ask. Because remember, the Ethiopia-Eritrean issue, which ended up in secession, isn't really that different from the Sudanese one.
Yep.
Not really. The Sudanese first civil conflict was 1955. Okay? The second one is what the one which people talk about, which began in the late 80s. Okay? But you're talking about a period spanning over something like 46 years of
Yeah.
conflict.
Yeah.
Now, it led to, yes, secession, but it was peaceful. Now,
Peacefully
that,
negotiated.
yes, that is a serious feat.
It's a big one.
If you consider the length of time these guys had been fighting. And remember, these people had what you call profound differences. There were people, yes, there was people who were more Arab oriented. There were people who were more African or Negroid oriented.
Yeah.
And they were saying, no. And Arabic was the language that everybody spoke. Even Southern Sudan, they still speak Arabic to date. Now, that was resolved. That they now went after each other's neck. That's a different discussion.
Yeah.
Later on.
Internally.
That's something totally different.
Yes.
Amongst themselves.
Ethiopia, if you're talking about secession of Eritrea, which was part of Ethiopia, what are the differences? If I were to ask you to tell me the difference between Eritrean and somebody called themselves an Ethiopian, it's like one clan seceded. That's what it boils down to. They didn't like what was going on. Now, the efforts cannot be understated, and the efforts that were made, and even the award itself, that little detail of not including Eritrea is what's causing this discussion. That little detail.
So if they come now, if someone is listening and they say, okay, actually, this is something that we need to take into consideration because yes, Eritrea's contribution was quite significant as well. But even offering the hand that was extended to them, that alone, of course, is what then fostered these good relations that we see later.
Yep.
Maybe.
You know, she's not going to let
And then
go of
everybody
this
will,
particular position.
bana. So now somebody will then say, okay, then maybe we should include them. Then people will be happy.
Yes. The unfortunate bit is that when they do that, also when they concede, it also starts watering down their own influence.
There you
And
go.
that's where the problem. They
Exactly.
should make
And
the
like
right-
I
make
continue
the right
to say,
decision.
right
the first
according
time.
to that can be interpreted in very different ways by virtue of the fact that people are human
Make
at
the
the, end
right
of the
decision.
day.
You see, even when they were conceding that they
According
made a
to them,
mistake,
they made the right decision.
when they were conceding that they made a mistake about Mahatma Gandhi, they are not saying the word, yeah, we made a mistake and now let's give him. They
No.
cannot give it
They
to him.
won't. They won't. So, again, it is within their prerogative. They made the decision. The formula that they used to arrive at this.
They are
secret
going against the
theirs.
wishes and the spirit of
Eritrea.
Albert Nobel. That's what I'm saying.
No, actually, I think they're
this
sticking
committee
right
is not
within the
living
tenets of what
according to the
what
tenets
he
and
wanted.
ideals.
That's one thing that they wouldn't sway away from. And again, we don't know what that was exactly.
You know, they came to that realization 68 years after Mahatma Gandhi had died.
Can you imagine?
We're heading towards a century. They said, you know, guys, we made a mistake.
This conversation continues on our social media platforms, Spice FM KE, Facebook, at Spice FM KE on Twitter. And of course, you can join the conversation as well on Instagram. We are also on Instagram, Spice FM KE. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. The Situation Room right here on Spice FM. Good morning, 8 minutes after 9.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings.
In the Situation Room, my name is Eric Latif. We have Nduoko and CT Muga. Switch gears a little bit.
Yes, but along the same lines. I want to look at the things that politicians say and the things that politicians do. That's to put it very, very simply. Most pronouncements that politicians make have to do with not just, it's not as though it's a promissory note. No. It has to do with a much larger document that they have. A manifesto. They usually have an idea of the things that they want to sell to prospective voters to tell them that they would be the best suited to be elected. Now, one of the things that also stands out is if you look at the world over, what one may call election promises also have a very direct correlation with what happens. That is, if the promises are kept. Many countries that we refer to as developed have a track record of politicians having said certain things and kept their promise. Not to say that they haven't said things and not done. No, but by and large, when they say they are going to do certain things, there is a correspondence. You will see that certain things actually get done. Now, among the other things that you actually see is that when promises are actually voiced and they're in the public arena and they are not actually brought into reality, into being, then you are likely to see a consequence that we refer to as protest votes. One country that experienced that very, very much was Malaysia. Promises were made, the public were unhappy, they decided to vote in an area that was predominantly, let me say, had been led by one particular party. A gentleman of Chinese origin who is Malaysian actually won an election. Now, you may say, but surely, it was unique. No, it wasn't unique. Examples all over the world are signs of politicians who've made promises but haven't kept them. A gentleman by the name of Silvio Berlusconi, 1994 Prime Minister, three-time Prime Minister of Italy, notorious for making promises that he would relinquish his position in the media industry, never did. And yet, his media empire was probably the largest in Italy. One other consequence you see of promises that are not kept is you actually see protests that may rise to the point where they destabilize a nation. Recent case is Hong Kong. There was the issue of self-autonomy. The Chinese government seemed to have other ideas and what they said and what they meant. The protests are still ongoing. And then we bring it down to Kenya, and this is even more interesting. In this very station, we have criticized our government for not fulfilling promises and for saying things that they clearly seem to have had no intentions of doing. And if you look at them, you will say, this government is doing very badly. But this is not entirely true. That is, if you juxtapose the promises that the current government, for instance, has made against other political parties on this continent and the promises they have made and how they've kept them. I looked at 10 promises that were made. Oddly enough, Kenya comes out looking really, really pretty because of the promises they've made. They have 6 that are still in progress. They have kept 2, and they have only broken 2. Nigeria, that is the Jubilee government, the APC party. The progress that the plans and the promises that they have in progress are 5. The ones they have kept are 0, and the ones they have broken are 5. If you go to ANC in South Africa, the ones that are in progress are 0, the ones that they have kept 1, and the ones that they have broken are 8. So, Kenyans, Jubilee Party in particular, comes out looking and smelling really, really, really rosy. But that is on this continent. If you put them against the yardstick of the West, they're not doing too badly because the inverse would be true. You'd find the promises that are kept are in the percentile of 70 onwards, and the ones that are not kept on the lower percentile.
So Jubilee is a global case study.
I am making it a global case study.
A global scorecard is glaringly
On how to actually
telling
make
you, it's
promises and deliver. Or at least show that you are
At least show that you are intending to deliver. My goodness.
What have you
this is
taken this
fantastic.
morning? Who bought you breakfast?
No, I'm just dealing with the fact.
Hey.
Jubilee promised that within 5 years they'd put 1 million acres of land under modernization. Well, they haven't actually modern irrigation. They haven't actually gotten there, but they're at around 500,000 acres under irrigation.
Where are those 500,000 acres under irrigation?
Well, we're
talking about new irrigation schemes.
Since they came into power.
All right.
Okay.
We will get to that. That's
Okay.
one.
They targeted 7 to 10% growth in the first 2 years of the Jubilee. Nothing has happened. That one, forget. 0, broken.
Don't even talk
It
about
hasn't
it
happened.
more. No, go. Okay.
They'd rise the transition rate from primary school to 90%. Yes, it has risen.
To
It's
100 now.
No, it isn't. It's gone around 60. It's risen. There's no question. That's why
Transition from primary to
yes,
to secondary.
yes, that
This
did
year
raise
it's
it up to
100.
90%. Eric, it is not 100. What the minister has told us is that they plan to make sure everybody has access.
Transition.
Let's wait and see if that actually happens. It is still at the
Okay.
level of a political promise.
All
Let's
right.
wait.
All right.
Let's wait.
So it's at what? The last,
It's gone beyond
by
60.
last count. That's by 2018.
Gone beyond
It was
60. Yes, it's
beyond
gone beyond
60%.
60%.
60% transition.
Yes. Now, increasing the national budget allocated to the counties from the current 15% to 40% within the next 5 years. They've done very well with that one.
They're at what, 25%?
Oh, actually, no, they've kept that promise. They keep raising it.
But what percentage? No, they're not at 40%. That's why they were having issues the other day.
No.
Where are they now?
The question about money to the counties, here what I realized is that you have to be specific. Money for what exactly? That they are giving money to the counties and continuing to give money, that is not a promise that has been broken. No.
No, but their promise is specific. We shall increase it from the current 15% to 40%.
There are those who are...
They are not at 40%, CT.
Allow me to continue with my discussion and tell you, there are people who argue that they have. I don't think they have, but I am saying it is a positive thing in that this is the statement of truth as I see it. It's a work in progress. It's a positive thing. They said they're going to increase police-citizen ratio from 1 to 1,150 to a ratio of 1 to 800 within 5 years. That one they have achieved. Okay. They said they're going to increase paved road network from the current 11,000 kilometers, 7%, to 24,000 kilometers, 15% in the next 5 years. Progress. Okay. Increased number of foreign tourists from 1.1 million to 2 million by 2020. Progress. Expand free primary education program to include 5 public secondary schools in Kenya. Progress. Ensure at least 33% of all government and parcel appointments are women. 0. Not kept. That has not been achieved. It's not complicated.
33% of all
government and parasitical appointments are women. I don't think we're even at 10.
No, unfortunately, I think that in terms of a study,
the promise was that in that time they would have gotten the 3%.
Yeah.
Because we're barely at 10, that promise has not been kept. So not kept.
I hear you saying overall, though, that, generally, if we look at what the Jubilee government has then been able to achieve, is above average. It's
Quote
doing
your
a
source,
good job.
City.
One
Quote
last
your-
one.
quote your source.
Ensure every citizen is connected to reliable and affordable electricity on or off grid by 2020. In progress. Africa check.
Africa check.
Yep.
Okay, I'll believe you. So
He has asked.
Yes, asked.
And I've answered.
And he's okay. So above, above
So overall scorecard?
Overall scorecard, the government is actually doing quite well
They
from
are.
what you would say. So then
They are.
all the mumblings and complaining that
Oh,
we've
no,
been...
no, no, no,
I'm
no.
asking. Let me ask. No, city small. I'm asking. So the mumblings and complaining, put this against this good scorecard, above average scorecard that we see coming from the statistics that you've just given to us. How then do we relate one to the other?
because Kenyans are just whiners. That's basically what he wants to tell us.
Oh, okay, here we
We're
go.
just whiners. We look at the negative, we amplify the negative. So we look at, if you have achieved 80%, we focus on the 20. Why haven't you done this 20%? You told us you'll be at 100.
And that is the right attitude to take. For the simple reason, remember, I premised by saying, countries that we consider developed, a lot of what contributes to that development is you can actually see indicators. These are people who actually aim to keep the promises that they make in relation to the development of their countries. Yes. Now, it's not progress. They will even tell you achieved. Achieved. Okay. It's not that they achieve everything. Even if you go down in history, it's not true. They don't achieve. In 1945, the British government promised that they were going to create a Ministry of Housing. They never did. Okay? And if you go along that line, I can give you many examples of promises that have been made the world over and simply not kept. Okay? I am looking at a scorecard that involves what, in this country, politicians, the Jubilee government, because they're in government,
They're the ones in power,
have said they would do. And I'm saying, given what they have said they would do, the clear sign is that most of these things are in progress. It's not as though they are dead.
How come that thing of yours does not mention stadium anywhere?
Have I even mentioned one particular project? No. I haven't mentioned. These were key promises that they made, all right?
Stadia were key promises.
Yeah.
What were they?
Yeah.
Infrastructure development. So, for example, you're talking about, you've talked about rural electrification, ensuring
Yes.
that everybody in the country has access to electricity. And you've said it's in progress. We have not reached 100%,
No.
but we are clearly somewhere. I think I read somewhere that we are a case study for Africa. That in terms of access to electricity, universal access to
More
electricity,
specifically,
we're doing very
geothermal. Everybody comes to study how we've done this thing. That one, we are a renowned leader.
We've done well.
Yes.
it comes to wind, they'll soon be coming to Lake Turkana to do the same.
Yeah, but these interfering do-gooders,
They're the ones. They'll soon start making noise. We are interfering with the cradle of mankind.
yes, and interfering with livestock, and you're interfering
ruining
with
the environment.
and interfering with
Yeah.
Well, they've got to earn a living, I guess, and also. Those who want to put up these things should put up a stronger fight and just ensure that they're able to present their case
And
in a stronger way
yes,
than the
yes.
others. So these do-gooders do have a role.
I still think, though, at the same time that, still saying, okay, fine, all right, I concede, and saying that, giving the government or giving this government a pat on the back and saying, yes, you've actually fulfilled some of the promises. It's a work in progress. We can actually see that and go along. However, I think poking holes in stuff that's not been done keeps them righteous, or at least spurs them onto some kind of righteousness where you say, okay, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that you should rest on your laurels because we've applauded what you've been able to do so far. But then it begs that you complete, and because the danger therein lies that they would say, okay, yes, well, we've received commendations for the work that we've done so far, all right, it becomes a joyride for the rest of the period. Absolutely not. So I think the nitpicking is necessary for
I think
to
the big-
spur them on to do better.
The
It's
glaring issue that's coming out here is even when we are nitpicking, we are not basing it on fact. So Africa Check, for example, have gone all the way and looked at it in terms of fact.
Yes,
This
some
is
key.
what was
Yes, not
promised,
everything. Yes, some
and
key.
this
They've
is
chosen
the
10.
progress for each of these 10 issues. Now,
But
the
then you
rest of
must-
us, when we make noise, the rest of the Kenyans, when they're saying this Jubilee government has failed us.
No, but I think
you're not
also-
looking at.
I think one thing
Failed you
that
in
one
what?
thing that cannot be overlooked is the fact that a lot of people make noise based on what is a personal experience to them.
Yeah.
Okay, so you driving or walking in your neighborhood and the road is in a dilapidated state, you will use that to extrapolate to other areas and say, look, the government is not working because where I am as an individual, this is not working. And then you use that for something for the rest of the country. If I walk into a supermarket and I'm not able to afford what I used to afford in January last year, the government is not working. If I take my child to school and for some reason things have gone up considerably from the last time, the government is not working. So a lot of times what you take and say the government is not working is akin to your personal experience.
personal.
Absolutely. And so you have many people taking their personal experience. It's like molecules that come together to form water. This is what happens. Everybody comes together based on their personal experience, form a public opinion, and that is what is pushed out there, which
So
of course cannot be ignored.
Then it can also
You
tell
have
you that
many people, you have a million people talking about the fact that the roads in their neighborhood are not working. That's something that cannot be
you cannot
it cannot
ignore
be
that.
ignored. Exactly.
What I'm asking is, does that then point to the fact that the government is doing stuff that is not really in touch with what
There's
the
no
people want?
connect.
There's no connection between what you're doing and what the people want.
Again,
So it's
in the-
okay. You can come and tell us, yes, we promised, and yes, we're doing this. But how does that translate to me?
To me.
If
Actually,
the economy
that-
is not
that-
growing at 7 to 10%,
That is one aspect, but
I can't
one
see
of the
it,
things
yeah.
that we've pointed out about most government agencies, they actually don't tell people what they're doing.
What they're doing.
So you can see things happening, but you need to harp on these things. You need to shout them from the rooftops. You need to talk about it at such great lengths that instead, what they feed us on are more promises based on the previous promises that had not been kept. So therein lies the problem. So essentially people say, wait, we're being lied to here. Remember, politicians make promises. Barack Obama promised that he would shut down Guantanamo Bay. To date,
Guantanamo Bay still exists.
growing strong.
he was looking for the key, and then he ran out of time. Within the 8 years that he was in office, he wanted to shut it, but then,
What also comes to the fore is that it's not that politicians will not say things that they will not do. No. It's where you have a large percentage of the things that are said and actually materialize into things which are done. That translates into development. Now, there was the American study in 2017. A study in the American Journal of Political Science found out, they studied 13 countries, okay, that where political parties fulfilled promises to voters. And they listed them: Austria, Bulgaria, Germany, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, Sweden, UK. Of note, there were no countries on this delightful and wonderful and beautiful continent. The Asian continent didn't also feature. So I'm assuming that it picked on certain countries that they want to. But again, the political parties the vast majority of things that they said they would do, they actually did.
And which year was this? When
This is a 2017 report.
the 2017 report?
Yes.
And this other one that you are giving as the scorecard is looking at which particular regime? Is it the Jubilee one or
Jubilee 1 and
is it-
2, because this report comes after they won the second re-election. The re-election.
The re-election.
Yes, exactly.
And even the same thing for ANC. ANC is coming.
Same period.
Is looking at Jacob Zuma, or is it looking at
No.
Cyril?
It takes the same period for the three countries, and it's telling you this what's happening. Okay, and they mention them by parties because this is the party that was actually in charge, and this is the net result. These are some of the key. They made many promises, but the ones we've picked are these, and these are the outcomes.
This is the progress.
Yes, and these had a very serious and direct impact on just the day-to-day livelihood. Stadiums don't have a direct impact on people's livelihood on a daily basis. They don't. Water does. Electricity does. Roads do.
Appointment of women.
It does.
So why haven't? If you look at it, why would you say the Jubilee government has not achieved that? That's one of the things that.
No. Why would I say? Have they achieved it?
No,
They've
I'm
not
saying
achieved it.
the
I
women
think
are
Eric
there.
is asking why is there then the reluctance to
What-
achieve that, and I think it's obvious
One of
because
those
if you
things that
put-
is straightforward.
Would be.
You're not saying that we are looking to first of all have more women so that we can then pick. We have 51%, 50%. Is it 51? 51% of our population.
But then you also
is of
realize
this
that
gender.
with the inclusion
We're talking
of
about appointments.
with the inclusion
every
of
new and
women
then.
for some of these appointments or some of these positions, that means that your position as a man in this case then becomes obsolete.
Yeah, but the promise was made, and if you are keeping all these other promises,
Of course, the
why
promise
would you at
the
least
promise
make,
were made,
make
but then
progress
also it
in
was
this?
clear that lip service was being applied here in terms of okay, yes, we'll do it, but on the many opportunities that they had to actually have this brought on the floor of the House, what happened? Lack of quorum. 1, 2, 3 times lack of quorum.
Well, that's
Why?
by-
What do
that-
you think?
That's
What
by-
do you think the reason was behind that?
That's by
You
politicians.
know, these are yes, but
Yes,
it's politicians
but
we're
it is
talking
them who are
about.
making the promise.
Political parties are actually
They're the ones
people
making the
by
promise.
and
They're politicians.
Yes,
I'm
they
saying
are
those are
politicians.
parliamentarians. Like, that's what I wanted to say.
They are all politicians.
They're all
And
politicians,
the
Jerry.
executive here. in
Try
terms
another
of-
one, Eric.
No. in
This
terms
one
of-
isn't flying.
There are
Yes.
terms of appointment. The president does not require to go and get that law done in parliament. He basically just needs to. He's the one who's appointing people into the boards of parastatals and government agencies. He does not need any law. He just needs to look and say, give me the people who we are nominating through the board of Tana and Athi, the water development or whatever. How many? 30% must be women. At least 30% must be women here. So why would we say? Why is it that?
Because there's a lack of will to get it done at the end of the day. If you want to do something, you will do it. You finish here, you're supposed to, you want to get something done. You really want to. From inside of you, you want to do it. You'll do it. But it is clear, we've had this, it's clear. Some things they just don't want to do. It's not a matter, what money are you looking for to implement this
Appointments.
2/3? What money are you looking for? Do you need another select committee to sit down and then discuss how we're going to go about it? You need the choirs to start singing and the choir master to come and start waving his wand for it to happen? No. It's a matter of saying, here we are, this is what we have, go. Just keep going. Don't pass go. Don't collect 200. Just move.
go.
But then even that, it's clear that there's no desire to have it done. And that's obvious. If they wanted to do it, they would have done it by now.
So this one is actually just glaring because this one doesn't require much effort.
No.
Everything else that you're doing, that
In
you're
fact,
saying,
today,
oh,
as we're speaking
the
today,
government has done.
January 14th, if they wanted to do it today, they
would
could
do it.
Yes, they would.
The other issues, so education is one of the other promises made. Transition by 100% from primary to secondary. If we look at it and we say, all right, so it hasn't happened at 100%. Is it because
The
of
transition from primary to secondary was 90%. That's what they promised, not 100.
they had promised 90%?
Yes.
And they achieved what?
Let me look at this. We are at
City,
now
one thing
60.
that's important, I think, for
Because
people
what
to
I'm looking at
understand
this,
is what this transition entails. Because people are thinking that it's just about if you finish KCPE, you go to Form 1.
Yeah, there's nothing
That's
like
a general
failing.
idea.
That
yeah,
is
exactly.
it.
That's what I'm saying. So this is what the transition actually
it's-
means.
it's
A
the-
lot of people feel that it is a lot more than that. So just from you and Cry, people will say, okay, yeah, they said we will go, but then what else does this mean? Am I now able to select? Can I be able to choose, etc., etc.? So it really is that if you finish KCPE, you will get a position in Form 1.
So why is it that we'd even say 90%? The 10% is because to cater for
what is-
infrastructure.
what
We don't
is-
have enough schools, enough
No.
secondary schools to accommodate.
What is presumed is that of those who qualify, 90% will. Because what we do have is a situation where there are many people who actually qualify, even take the discussion even further. up to university. Many will qualify, but not everybody would get a place. So the discussion that they're now having is not at everybody. No, those who qualify will get. What the Minister for Education was saying was precisely that of these people who qualify for this, we are going to ensure that 100%.
No, actually, in this year, C.S. Magoha is saying everybody who sat.
No, you cannot give everybody, even those
it's
who
for
failed.
everybody.
It doesn't happen.
But
There is
this
no
is what he
failing.
said.
That's the point.
But this is what
I
he
am
said.
trying to say
The point
it doesn't happen.
No,
Right,
but
but
the
understand
point
that
is,
it is coming from the CS education,
Yes.
and he said, regardless of your marks,
There's no
you will
failing
get a
in standard
position
eight.
in Form 1. This is
as
what
long
he
as
said.
you have done KCPE, you are going
you will
to
go to
Form
Form
1.
one.
Now that's a political
That's a
statement
transition.
that
Exactly.
is not going to result in any reality.
And even that, when they were making that promise, that's exactly what they meant. That when you sit, this is not a mchujo. It is not a
No.
place where people drop off at standard 8. We are going to ensure that people do not drop out of school
It is
at
mchujo.
primary.
Actually,
They
this
all
is a
transition.
false notion.
And what I'm saying by
and that's
90%
again
is
politicizing something that is actually serious. Look,
Some of the
not
reasons why-
everybody in a setup where you have exams, not everybody will pass.
Will pass,
That
that's for
is
sure.
simple fact. And as a result of that, you then have to ask, what are the exams for?
Right. But
it's
then
an
he's-
assessment. It's an assessment not meant to actually grade you and say that you have failed. It's an assessment just to know your
Brother,
capabilities.
brother,
and your capabilities will
brother,
determine what school you
brother.
go to.
Young man.
The
Listen.
assessments, brother, the assessments relate to subjects that people study.
Yes.
And to actually comprehend whether you have understood what was being taught, that's what they grade you for.
Yes.
It determines. The exam is, we've asked these questions, we've asked you to respond to these things, and your response must indicate an understanding of what was taught.
Yes.
If it doesn't, you failed. Please don't call it something else which it isn't. You have failed.
Yes. But you will still find a place in secondary school.
No. That is where, again, they are lying. Because if you cannot find places for people who have actually passed their exams, how are you going to find places for people who have not passed their exams?
And this is what we see currently happening now, because it is quite a mess in the schools in terms of placements for students. Based on the promise, this is what should have happened, but it didn't and hasn't.
Let's take a look at traffic and then we continue the conversation. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the situation room, right here on Spice FM. My name is Eric Lati. We have City Muga and Nduoko at 28 minutes to 10 o'clock.
The 80s have never sounded so good.
My favorite songs of the 1980s.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Traffic.
Right, so there's a bit of traffic, well, not a bit, quite a lot still on Thika Road. Coming around 9:30, it is not interesting, but look, this is what is happening right now. Overpass heading to Ngong Road, there's a burden of traffic there right now, coming off of Mombasa Road. Also, we have some traffic as well. It's staving off, but not as quickly as we would like it to. Bagavi Way, yes, of course, there's an operation there, so people are moving slower than they normally would because the police are checking to see if you're wearing your seatbelts. So that's something you might want to comply with before you approach Bagavi Way. All right, coming off Langata Road and Ngong Road, not so bad this morning. And coming off Wayaki Way, we had some problems there as well. So traffic is still in gridlock situation. That'll get better. Looking at Mombasa town now, we see that earlier on we had a bit of a hold up on Moy Avenue, but that has cleared up now and everybody is off to do their business. Spice FM KE is where you can shout to us on Twitter or give us a call. Right now though, traffic shouldn't be so bad. Let us know, we'll let us know.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
We're looking at politicians and the promises that politicians make, and then CT Muga is giving us some statistics here of promises and pledges made by political parties, and then when those political parties get into power, do they actually start implementing and getting towards achieving what they promised? And well, it appears that Jubilee Party is actually doing pretty well, even in Africa and globally, in terms of the number
Africa.
of Africa.
Let's stop.
Let's just do Africa, right?
Yes,
we do
stop
Africa.
there.
Globally, not doing so well.
High development records are often a very direct indication of promises that have been kept. We have development records, they are not high. So it means that our promise rate is not high. The keeping of our promises is definitely not high. The examples I gave was for you to notice that even with the abilities that two of Africa's greatest economies, all right, the development that you speak of will remain stunted if this sort of thing goes. They say things, they not done. When you have a track record of things, the promises which have not been kept at 8 out of issues, 9 issues that I looked at, you have a problem. You have a serious problem on your hands.
To say the least.
And these two big economies are South Africa and Nigeria.
Yes.
But in the case of Kenya, so how does Kenya compare with South Africa and Nigeria?
We do very well.
We're shining.
Man, most of our issues are in progress. If you look at the list that I gave you, the promises that we've broken in Kenya, only 2 out of 10.
And those 2 are appointment of women and
I need to look. I didn't memorize this
okay.
thing.
Okay. As you look at that, so appointment of women and another one, and then the others promises that have been kept and promises that
target
are in
of 7 to 10% growth.
Oh,
that
economic
one
growth.
also, yes, hasn't been kept.
We're looking at education and saying, so the promise that was made to education is to ensure that we have a 90% transition rate from primary to secondary.
It's in progress.
Of course, what the government meant was not we are going to ensure that we have bright children who pass exams. It's we are going to ensure that we have facilities at secondary level that can accommodate everybody who passes through primary level.
And they also didn't say they would build these facilities. They just said that facilities would be available.
Right.
All right?
Now,
that's where the private schools now come in.
Does that also count? I don't think that should count.
Oh, no. So long as the children going to school, no one is looking at whether they're private or public. No. The government provides an enabling environment for people to even do that sort of business. And it's Kenyan children going to schools that are in Kenya. So they are going to school. Okay? The minister did not say we are going to build schools to accommodate. No. They said we will ensure. That's it. Now, interpret as you see fit. So long as a child is going to school, no one is asking whether it's a government school or not.
No,
it's a school.
It's the bare minimum, and the bare minimum must be met. Now, when these promises come along, all the flowers and bells and whistles, of course, is not what is paid attention to. But the bare minimum, did they go to school? Yes. Tick. That's what we're looking for.
Then we have achieved more than that.
That's what I was going to say. If those are the requirements,
progress means things have been
there's
done.
Also the
and
issue,
there's more to do. That's what progress means.
I think there's also the issue of the economic capability of the parents, because one of the reasons why people drop out of school are not able to join Form 1 is because of not able to pay school fees. So if you've not sorted out the finances, maybe that's where the 10%
which is supposed
comes
to
in.
be free.
Free.
Okay.
Yes, the free
they
school
can't afford
fees,
the free school fees,
to go to even. We saw even in the news yesterday. You're seeing people who are going to report to Form 1 and they're saying, "Well, I still need some bursary support." So you're applying for bursaries and all these things because you need to pay school fees for these other things that are called, the cost sharing aspects of the free education. Free education, there's some cost sharing aspect, right? Now we're in agreement.
It's free education which you pay for, and it's also free because there's cost sharing.
Yes, there's cost sharing.
So it's free.
Yeah, it's
so
free.
I guess
we've understood
the
that.
10%, the 10, because I'm trying to figure out why would you say 90%? What's the magic with 90? Why not just say 100?
Because they know something is going to fall through the cracks.
Yes. And where is this? What is this 10% going to be?
If you come to fault them later, they will be able to throw certain elements into that 10%. You must understand the 10% is kept aside for cases where there's a problem and somebody comes to ask a question. They say, "Well, what? That fell in the 10%." So okay. Then they're justified.
Saying 100 is tricky.
It's very tricky.
It's a full transition.
For a politician. Man.
Full transition.
If you say 100, then that person is not a seasoned politician. If they say 100, then that person doesn't know what they're doing in terms of politics.
You must leave room for the next government to
Margin
come
of
and say,
error must play out here, my friend. Margin of error must play out.
You must leave room for you to maneuver. Because this is actually for you to be able to say, we did say this, but we only have this percentile that we haven't reached, but we have done this. And they have done things. Now, one of the criticisms we've actually levied against this particular government is they don't talk about these things loud enough, so people don't know.
No.
And they ought to. Not just making statements that people can point to and say.
Give us something there that we have not been aware of.
No, but look at
one of those things
for
that you've
example, what the Prime Minister of New Zealand did a couple of months ago in her
Doing the
whole
1 minute
spiel
thingy.
about her 2 minutes and what we've done in 2 years in 2 minutes. Oh boy, she let the people of New Zealand know what she did. She went from sector to sector, individual, micro to macro, up and down. If anything, she patted herself on the back as the government for what they've been able to do. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you should be able to say, look, people, Kenyans, this is what we've actually been able to do. This is what we are doing. This is what we plan. This is what we've set in place to have it done. But the
disconnect comes
the loud
when people
silence is actually not
welcome. If you
welcome.
need to come and tell me that you have put in new lights in this studio and I haven't seen the new lights, that's where the disconnect comes in. Because you're wondering, so why must you tell me about light? If there's extra light, I will see the light.
No,
If
you have
there's-
to say it.
You have to
Eric,
say it.
if you're a government, you have to say it because
You
not
have to
everybody
laud your
likes you.
accomplishments.
Not everybody voted for you.
Remember,
and there are people who will just be looking for faults.
Remember,
you
by
must
the way,
say it.
in fairness, the government says it all the time.
Okay.
As
Yeah,
reason,
no.
Okay.
let me
Carry on.
give you examples. If you go back to the speech by the president on Jamhuri Day, go back to the speech by the president on New Year's Eve, go back to the speech by the president on any national holiday in this country, he starts by looking back at what the government has done. We have done this, we have done the other, and we are
That
working
isn't what I
towards
was
doing this
referring
and
to.
the other. He mentions it.
That's not
He
what
talks
I'm
about
referring
it.
to, Eric.
If you talk about when they are
Those
going
10-hour speeches, you lose people, man.
After the first 10 minutes, people are done. They're thinking it's a holiday. Can we get to our holiday?
In
please?
2017, if you looked at all the bridges and footbridges and overpasses in this city, they had all been painted Jubilee delivers. And what was it? The things that the Jubilee government has done. Do you remember what you were saying there?
Eric,
Why?
you are
Because we are cynical.
Eric, you are in communication.
We look at it, we are cynical. We don't internalize it because I'm feeling if you must tell me about it.
Politics isn't about
And I haven't
retaining
felt it.
those who like you. It's also winning people from the other side. How do you do this? The government has the means to advertise. The government has the means to ensure that those details per county, they are understood. Kirinyaga, we've done this for you. Machakos, we've done this for you. One speech on some national day. Okay, do you even remember one thing that was said in National Day? One, not two.
No.
It's difficult.
It's
It's difficult to remember because that is a national day. That's not the day you go to be informed. We consume, for instance, something like the budget. When kind people summarize it for us and they tell us, this is what's happened.
This is actually means.
And you read it so you understand. Then you focus on what relates to you directly. Say, there's this, and this. Otherwise, it is one lengthy speech that for most people makes very little sense. Say, have they increased the price of alcohol? Aye, they've increased the price of alcohol. Cigarettes, see, now. Bread, okay. Milk, now. The government knows full well what they ought to do. It's not me to tell them what they need to do and how. If these politicians can go around the country telling us all sorts of things that paint this rosy picture of what they want to do for us, what makes them think that they're once in power, they shouldn't be doing the same thing? Not blanket statements. It's like, we've brought development. That means zero.
They do communicate. What I'm trying to say is,
Eric, I'm telling
as long
you,
as in this,
if that
remember the example I gave you
was
in this studio.
adequate,
If the communication is coming to tell me that you have added something that I have not noticed, that communication will not sync with me. I need to actually have noticed. Then you're coming and bragging and saying, you see this light? You
Eric,
see this new mic? I
Eric,
brought the mic.
Permit me
Yes,
to just
that's what public
inform you.
relations is.
But you can't come and tell
But
me,
that is what
this
PR
man is in
is.
communication.
You can't come and-
and he understands exactly.
That's what public
You guys are
relations
not
is.
listening
You're
to my
telling
point. My
people
point
what
is-
you've done and what they can see.
If I
but you're
cannot
telling
feel
them
it-
again so that to emphasize
But
that you're
who
actually
says
doing a good
even
job.
one of the reasons why they don't feel it or they don't recognize what you're saying is because they don't see it. It is
But
not,
then you must
they're
make them
not
see
That
it.
is what we are
They're
saying.
not
You must
relating.
make them see it. You must make them see it.
Look.
And there are creative ways to do that.
When the government declared free primary education, what happened was our schools got filled. It was one of the most wonderful things I ever saw. Because I said, hey, people who otherwise would never have had a chance to be educated are going to get an education. I said, it doesn't matter if there are 70 students in a class.
Bring.
It doesn't matter if you're going to think that, there is a failure in the ratio of students to teacher. We have now.
And then happily for the government, there are people like Kimani Maruge.
I'm going
who,
The 84-year-old.
yes, the 84-year-old, and then that becomes like a poster child for
And
this whole
others followed.
good
Others
story.
followed.
And others.
But then, Eric, and then we have 300,000 teachers who are trained and don't have jobs. Now, you see, now, there you ask, okay, Serikali.
Shida iko wapi?
Yeah, how are we prioritizing these things? These people are trained. They don't have jobs. Where this? Okay, you are telling us this is a priority. How do you relate this to this?
Right. And where does
Something-
all of this stand on your priority ladder?
Yes, because
one thing
here we don't lack
seems-
manpower. We have manpower, but somehow they are not employed. And every solution that the government brings, you say they're trying, but you wonder, how far is this going to go? It's plaster on a broken leg, not plaster of Paris here. I'm talking about the
Band-Aid.
little bead, yes, Band-Aid. And I'm thinking, now that's where the issue of broken promises come in. That's where, so even when you're talking progress, you're saying the broken promise here is on ensuring that the Kenyan child actually gets an education. The moment the teachers aren't adequate, going to class does not mean or doesn't directly translate.
Doesn't translate to
into
education.
No, not necessarily. Not if you don't have adequate manpower.
Increasing police officers is the other thing that I heard you saying. That
That one they've done very well.
We have hit a target.
Yes,
that they had set.
Oh, they have done very well. The ratio
That would mean
1
that
to
we've
1.1 to 1,500 to 1 to 800. They've gotten there. There are enough policemen. You can actually argue that that ratio has improved.
And this is about hiring more police officers.
That's what it boils down
That's
to.
what it boils down
isn't-
to. Get
there's
more
nothing
people
more
on
to
the
it.
force. Get
Not
someone
more
there.
policemen being born. You just have to hire
It's
them.
hire
just
someone.
hiring more police officers. Do we actually feel like that has actually happened?
Yes,
in the
we
last couple
feel.
of years?
If you are in Joro, you would know that it's true. If you're in Egerton University, you would know it's true. That ratio has improved.
Oh, Jake, what?
Have you seen how those students are being frog run? Because this is in the march.
This is not much.
You are held by the trousers, and then you're on the run.
It's 14 minutes to 10 o'clock, and this is the Situation Room.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Looking at government promises, party pledges and party fulfillment of those pledges. Jubilee government compared to the ANC in South Africa, compared to, what's the one for? APC in Nigeria.
Yes.
Which other one in Africa have you compared to?
No, I just took three.
Those three.
I took
Those
two
two.
leading economies on this continent. Then I said, let's look at ours compared to this.
Now, imagine what could happen in these leading economies if the governments were actually doing what they needed to do to meet up to these promises. Imagine how much more robust and vibrant these economies would be if actually these promises made at election time, made whenever they were actually met and kept. Can you imagine where we would be? It makes me giddy with excitement just thinking about the development that could actually take place on the continent. Voila, we are...
But just so that our politicians have a little reprieve, the other politicians around the world have done a sterling job of not keeping promises. I'm going to go back into the other century. The Australian PM then was a gentleman called Bob Hawke, with a Hawke with an E at the end. In 1987, he said, by 1990, no Australian child will be living in poverty. Poverty levels have risen since. And they seem to keep rising.
Are those children Australian?
I'm referring to
Or are they
Australian
immigrants?
children.
Or are they immigrants?
Are they immigrant children?
Maybe the ones suffering from poverty are not Australian. That's what
they are
Eric is trying to say, essentially.
Look at, Barack Obama again in 2010 said that India is not emerging, it has emerged. And why did they say that? If you looked at Forbes told you that one of the things that they measured was that, for instance, Indian billionaires, according to the standard they used, right, had, by the way, let me just start by explaining that India at the time that we were speaking had over 300 million.
India.
India.
Yeah.
India had 300 million people who comprised the middle class. It has since increased. Okay, but one of the things that stood out was just the number of billionaires. You know, they shot up. Okay, at some point, the Forbes had them at just 23. They shot up to 55. And some more astounding things happened. There is a family-owned business called Tata. Okay, now the gentleman who headed it, a gentleman called Ratan Tata, donated $50 million, okay, to Harvard University, all right, to build Tata Hall. Outstanding things. Then there was a telecommunications giant, a gentleman by the name of Ambani. He bought 50% of Steven Spielberg's DreamWorks. Indians were moving the planet. And people were saying they're coming to us.
They're crossing borders.
Yes, that particular, not decade, that particular period of 2 to 3 years didn't end before India went into some serious doldrums. Okay? All I'm saying is that there were indications that things were good. But if you talk about 300 million middle class, what is the population of India? It's not even a third. It's less than a third. So the vast majority, who actually are the ones whose interests should be perhaps taken care of a little more, didn't see the joy and happiness that was being
all these things you guys are talking about.
No. It wasn't being felt qua ground. Now, in the same way, a promise, even if you think it has been kept, and the ground, as Kenyans say, doesn't feel it, that promise might as well not exist.
Exactly. That's the thing. You make a promise.
Now you've come to the point.
There it is. You make a promise. If I don't feel it, then there was no promise.
Connected.
It doesn't exist.
This promise.
But you can understand also that sometimes promises are made, they're kept, or something is actually done about it. But if you don't speak about it, then there's no way for us to then know the existence of it.
Or connect the dots for me. How is this going to translate to
something that will benefit me as an individual? Absolutely.
And show me, well, and also something, if this is going to benefit the children of my children, really, that is throwing it too far. Kenyans, we don't think generation ahead, like we were just talking about this story in the Standard today. People and managing their wealth posthumously. They don't plan
think in terms
succession
of planning.
So when you come and tell me that this is a project that's going to benefit the generations to come, and I'm not feeling it now, I'm wondering, what are you talking about? These things that you're talking about, improving it's infrastructure projects, they're long-term infrastructure projects. That's why people are complaining. They'll be wondering, what is the connection? Today, I am not able to feed my family. Today, I'm not able to get a job. Today, I'm not able to get a secure transport or security around my home.
Right.
What are those things that you're telling me that you're building, castles in the sky? When am I ever going to fly?
Well, I think, definitely when we're looking at the way governments and the way in which they do things, then it's clear that, at some point, unfortunately, some promises are being made to get them into office. It behoves governments then to say, let's actually get some of this stuff done, and hopefully that will be the overriding or overarching principle of all of this, that we made a promise to the people of this nation and we said that we're actually going to get 1, 2, 3 things done. Let's actually get it done and stay away from the euphoria that was, politics at that point, but actually do something for the betterment of this country. Unfortunately, then we cross lines when it comes to, I want to be a politician because of what it can do for me as an individual, or I want to be a politician because of what I can then do and contribute to the country. And I think the latter should definitely override the former, of course.
I think also the way we as Kenyans look at things, if you look at how we treat our past presidents, we only have 2, right? So after Mzee Moi left, in the years of Kibaki, people would look back with nostalgia, the years of Moi, and say, what did Moi achieve? Actually, Moi was able to do this and the other. And we look back and we're like, Moi did something. When Kibaki was in power, the politicians as well were the ones who were asking, this guy is talking about economic development, that Kenya is, growing at a rate of 7% and above. We are not feeling it on the ground. Years later is when we keep looking back and saying, when Kibaki was in power, the kind of work that he did, this is what we saw,
these are the things we enjoyed, right? Yeah.
So wait until 2024, 2023, and then we'll start looking back and seeing, hoping that Uhuru Kenyatta is not a prime minister. We'll be looking back and seeing, in the years of Uhuru Kenyatta's presidency, this is what he did, and we can feel it. this is the point when we'll start appreciating the work that you've, just listed there at CT, that the Jubilee government did this and the other. We'll be looking at it and seeing it then and feeling it then. Right now, tell us, singing to the birds.
Actually, the promises can be actually appreciated in real time. Again, if you understand, as you say, that you have a people who are cynical, then you need to take your communication. As you have your communication set up, you need to take that into consideration. These are cynical
Understand your
people.
audience.
These are cynical people, and this is how I need to. But the problem is, when you have an entire nation who have been bombarded by promises at every level, national, county, parliamentary, MCAs, what you're bombarded with is promises, and the outcome is unkept promises. Can you really be blamed if you become cynical?
Well, of course, definitely. When he said that, leaders would say, well, the people are complaining that we haven't done this, that, or the other thing. Well, that's because it hasn't been done. And that's what I'm saying. For me, in this, it's so simple. 1 + 1 = 2 in this case, whereby you would say, they've said you've not done it and you're feeling a little bit bad, feeling a little bit raw, get it done, and then you will see what the response will be overall. And I think the nitpicking is necessary, again, to keep leaders righteous and make sure that they actually do that which they said they would do, and that upon which the responsibility has been placed upon them to do for nations, to do for countries, to do for your own little area, your ward, your constituency, your county, and then, of course, the government, or rather the nation as a whole. It behoves leaders to actually go in that direction. The promises should be kept. And in the instances where they're not kept, the nitpicking must come in. It must play. It must.
It calls on the populace as well to actually understand those promises. If you have them somewhere that you remember, this is what the government promised. And then this is a scorecard. We're looking at it from a point and saying, this, what they promised versus what they're doing. We can then give them a scorecard and say, yeah, you've tried, we give you over 50%, you've passed, our pass mark is at 70%, or this one you have not started, then that's where the nitpicking would happen. But the problem again is what we do. We just remember the main thing that they talk about, and we hold on to that one.
And forget about the rest.
Where are the stadia? That's it.
Actually, I take it further. Where are the free computers for primary school teaching?
Oh, yes.
Yep, that's where
the
I take
laptops
it.
for kids.
Yes, I will take it there. Because it's not that it's not known how these projects can be developed. And it's
funded,
developed and funded. It's not that you don't have people, universities, manufacturers who can say, look, since it's for schools, it doesn't have to be expensive.
We can do a
yes,
low
but
cost
because many of your places are remote, we will build them this way. I say this because I have seen such situations even in research settings where you are given computers that take into consideration the terrain you're going to work in, the hardiness, dust resistance, some rain resistance, meaning it's something that is built to last.
Right.
Now, these things can actually come in at a real minimum cost. But our people will go look for the most expensive
one.
No. To quote, when it's actually supplied, it's something else. Nations which in many ways compete with us in poverty in Latin America have actually been able to provide this sort of thing for everybody who is in primary school. It's not the most difficult thing to do.
It can. This is a thing. It can actually be done.
It can, and there are people who are willing to support doing it. There are even people who are willing to donate so that they can do it.
All it takes is a little. It just takes a little bit of application.
But
in terms
our
of self.
people want it to be bought so that procurement can be contravened and twisted and turned,
unfortunately,
and mutilated,
and money gone.
Actually gone.
No sooner had you
than.
Coming to the end of the show, this is the Situation Room. We thank you very much for joining us today, and every morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., the Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room every day, we have C.T. Muga, Nduoko, and Eric Latif. And of course, between now and 3 o'clock, you're going to be having an uninterrupted music. And then later, we have Spice Drive between 3 and 7. And the adults in the room, they discuss various issues of national importance. For example, yesterday they were discussing ways to show gratitude to your spouse. This is Eric, Emmanuel, and Barbara, the Duchess of Ikolomani.
Gratitude.
Ways to show gratitude to your spouse.
National issue. Oh,
What
it is.
What would you give that? So somebody was actually commenting and saying,
has
you show
spouses.
absolute gratitude to your spouse by developing understanding, appreciation, love, companionship, and accepting him or her, not forgetting giving corrections amicably where necessary.
What on earth have you just said?
Very many things. ways to show gratitude to your spouse.
Why don't you just say then? Why don't we recommend that every Kenyan who is married, each one buys a flag with it written "Love, Peace, and Unity." So when you have discussed,
You just
wave at each other.
Love. I appreciate you.
Yes.
Somebody actually also commented and said, make sure that you praise them, especially in the presence of the children, so that the children know that you appreciate your spouse.
That is the one thing you said that makes total sense.
It does.
On this subject.
For this-
On this subject,
this is
total
it.
sense. Yes. Practical can be done. Talk peace, love and unity to them.
Never.
They will never understand it.
First of all, in an African setting, the wife will wonder what on earth
Is
is this
What's
guy
wrong with this
doing.
What do you
man?
wear?
What has he done?
What